You could have heard this episode 48 hours early on our Patreon, patreon.com/indieheadspodcast. By joining us for as low as $1 a month, you'll see episodes early, gain access to our Discord server, and get yourself an Indie Heads podcast sticker. All of our upcoming episodes will be up on our Patreon, patreon.com/indieheadspodcast. 48 hours before it hits our public podcast feeds. But if you're hearing this via our Patreon feed, we want to thank you so much for your support. We especially want to thank all of our Patreon supporters, including Becca Etienne, Georgia Bukowski, James Boss, Marcy Anime, Chance Holdup, Delaney Mothman, Josiah Duncan, Jenna, Matt Cameron, Grant in the Back of My Dragula, Connie, Javon Clement, Jimmy Elward, Teague Christie, Charles, Nicole Rifkin, Tim's Discount Prices, Jay, Rena K, Ian, Matthew Taylor, I Like Books, Sarah Moore, Griff, Max Kapazinski, Mark Barry, Cal50, Titty Come Titty, Chris Wade, Midwest Maxwell, Jake Wald, Grant, Keep Autism Weird, Rob Marino, Max, Dylan, Zach, Gavin 490 Freak, Amber Grossi, and Maze Farms. And if you want to be amongst these names, consider supporting us on Patreon, where if you upgrade to the Real One tier, you'll receive a bonus episode every month on top of other perks. And before we move into the episode, I just want to thank the rest of our Patreon supporters like Jason Daphnis, Kevin Cookman, Ellie Mullenberg, Cheddas, Nato, Robin Parlow, Eric Chow, Josh, Holiday Kirk, Tyrone Shuhan, Jade Amjadi, Alexis Davin, Cody Gagan, Barely March, Vinka LaFleur, Will Griffin, Corbin Camage, Gavlin, Matthew, Ethan Sapir, Matthew McPherson, Rainey Donaldson, Eleanor Grams, Wilfer Thrill, GayRs420, Lily, Jacqueline Kadiga, Alec Felder, Talks to Trees, Molly O'Brien, AJ Moser, Eraser Eye Baby, Matthew Herring, Jack Tiggleman, Sarah L., Jeremy Bull, Alex Gritchmanoff, and Derek Pemberton. Anyways, though, enjoy the episode.
Hello and welcome to Best New Podcast. It's Jackie. I was on time. Don't Jackie me. We're fine. You're just.
I can fix it in post.
It's fine. Hello everyone. Welcome to the podcast. This is Best New Podcast, a series about the songs of 2010 through the tracks that Pitchfork gave Best New Track. And we've been covering these songs for a couple of episodes now. This is our second episode of the 2014 series. And we have with me, as always, the two co-hosts, Rose and Matty. Hello.
Hello.
And we have two very special guests this episode. Friend of mine, friend of many of ours on the internet, we have Devon Chodzin. Hello, welcome to the podcast. Long overdue.
Hello, glad to be here. This is Devon Chodzin. Happy to report.
Seriously, long time coming. I'm genuinely surprised we have not had you on until now, but very glad that you're finally on the pod.
I'm very scared to ask for things that I want out of life. And so when you actually provided the opportunity to do it in a way that sounded productive, I definitely leapt right on. Especially because this is like, I don't know, the end of my high school years when I start having much more of a musical consciousness that is less like, I don't know, just like handed to me. So
this is a joke we've made throughout the series, but it's Miranda's tweet about an album being good because I was 17. That's a lot of what this series is about for us specifically as people. I graduated high school in 2015. Not to
we're the
put
same,
our guest
Jackie.
on the spot, but
same class.
Yeah, this is very formative music for me, and joining us to discuss some of that formative music is someone who wrote about a lot of it. You know him if you are listening to a podcast about Pitchfork. It's Ian Cohen.
And some albums were great because you happen to be 17 times 2. I was 34 years old in 2014, and I probably should have cleared this up beforehand, but I imagine I didn't look this up. I imagine I wrote about like half at least of these songs. Yeah. And if you read out loud the things I wrote back then, I might like just hop off this podcast.
We don't do that by necessity, and I'm not going to subject you to that because if someone did that for like things I wrote for Pitchfork like 2 years ago, I would combust. So
yeah, I found
not going to do that.
I found that the most effective way to make fun of a music writer in real life is to read something to them that they wrote, and so they can recognize, like, oh my God, I sound like this. It's been like most of the most mortifying experiences I've had, just regarding this particular line of work have been when people have read stuff I've written to me. And it's not even necessarily that they're trying to be like disrespectful.
No,
It's
yeah.
like, but it's just like, it's the way it feels. So I'm glad we
It's
got this
very
out of the way at the
vulnerable.
top. Yeah,
It's a vulnerable place to be, having to not have the shield of a piece of paper and having to
Yeah.
actually say that stuff out loud. It gets tough real quick.
Yeah,
Mhm.
like we used to read the track reviews sort of out of necessity, just because, especially like 2010, 2011, when a lot of us hadn't like booted up yet, for lack of a better term. And so now we're actually living in it. Like, okay, we are all reading Pitchfork regularly. These are tracks that are canonized in our youth, where it's like, we don't need no Pitchfork writer to tell us how we should feel about
No,
this track. We
actually,
don't
it's
need
the
no
opposite.
context.
These are the years where I have memories about not just the music, but I have memories about people's reaction to the music, including Pitchfork. Right? This is like where me as the music discourse observer sort of comes online, more than the music fan, because I think that was like a couple years earlier, but I just wasn't tapped into like Pitchfork specifically until around this time. And there's just a lot of good music to talk about this week, so let's get into the playlist.
Yes. So our first song on the playlist today comes from the power pop luminaries, the new Pornographers. It's Brill Bruisers, the title track to their album from 2014. I'm gonna sound, hopefully I don't sound stupid for asking, is this one of the ones that's written by Dan Behar? Is this one of the three tunes he would usually provide for the new pornos at this point in time?
If you
Not sure
can't
who's the
tell
expert.
which one is singing, that's like a real skill issue right there. Because
Well, I know,
Yeah,
I know
that's a
it's
new
Carl singing, but
joy.
usually I mean, based on my memories of new pornos, Dan would usually write, but not always sing on the songs he
okay.
wrote. But
Yeah,
in this
my
case, I might be wrong.
understanding that I know that was true on the last record, the name of which I can't recall, even though I reviewed it. But there was like one really, really good song on it, and it was taken from like a snippet of a lyric that Dan Behar wrote. Like he had nothing at all to do with the record, but it's just like, oh, so now it makes sense that I associate like early days. Dan writing the songs that he sang. I don't know how involved he was by 2014. Also, shocked, like dumbfounded that this was a best new track. Like, just not because it's a bad song or whatever, but like, I mean, I was there. Like, I have no recollection of this whatsoever. This album, this song being praised. But hey, look at that. I mean, this is why we do this pod, right?
Yeah. I am curious who wrote the track review for this real quick, but go ahead,
I'm saying
Riz.
Stuart Berman wrote the album review. Let me see who wrote the track for this
I guess
one.
my biggest beef with the song is it kind of just feels like they did Moves again. Like, Moves was a good song. It's, like a classic video from Tom Sharpling. Good melody, and like this just kind of feels like they're doing the same thing.
We will not be reading this track review because yes, this is an Ian Cohen best new track.
Way.
I didn't want to say it, but
right off the bat, yes, this is an Ian Cohen best new track for Brill Bruisers.
I mean, I don't know if this is like a sign of like brain rot, early like music writer dementia, or just I don't know, a sign of just how busy I was back then. Just like you could write a track review about anything back then. I think we would publish like 5 or 6 per day. And so I was just churning out content. So, oh my gosh, wow.
I don't remember any of the things I said on this podcast a few years ago, and I'm 27, so I think it's just a part of being a content producer is you just have to forget everything you blather out about, or else you would be burdened by all of it.
Yeah.
There was a great bit that not to give like a shameless plug for IndieCast, but there was an episode where Steve, like when Pitchfork like was more or less supposedly folding into GQ, like we did a thing where Steven read off a bunch of like reviews, like, did you review this or not?
Oh, that was very funny. I remember that.
I'm like, God damn, like that. So all these people, all these lives, where are they now?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good song though. Bill Bruisers. Hey,
I think it's solid. It's a band I have not a lot of familiarity with, besides just them being a name that has been around for forever, and I know that they're like a semi super group adjacent project of sorts. But yeah, no, it's solid. I believe, doesn't one of the new pornographers, wasn't he the guy that wrote the Office theme?
Yes, because we at our old job,
I remember that from
we did
Nick
publicity
doing
for
the publicity
him.
for that guy. Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like
this
Todd
is fine.
something?
We've been doing a lot of this joke on this series, and I was trying to think of where the origin of this general joke construction that we've become very fond of. I think it's Jerry, the Seinfeld 2000 Jerry Get iPad, but in this series especially, we're addicted to they couldn't call it blank, and if they were the new pornographers today, they'd be called the new OnlyFans creators. Anyways,
or in another case, the new Gooners in an opposite direction.
That's worse. That's worse.
Yeah, the new Gooners. They're on tour with High Viz or like one of those, like or the chats. Or like
they're
one of
opening
those
for Snooper.
New Gooners drop from tour with Mexican Coke and fentanyl.
They're opening for Viagra Boys. That's
exactly
who they're playing with.
Oh God,
we've nailed it. But yeah, this is. I don't have a ton to say about this one. I think it's just. I think it's understandable to forget this being like an album that was hyped, because I just think there's a lot of stuff in these first couple years of the 2010s that is really like artists from the 2000s coasting on that critical buy-in from the administration of Pitchfork at the time. Like, it's just like certain people that they're just like, these are bands that we sort of approve of, and so if they don't drop a stinker, we're gonna keep endorsing.
Well, I think that the new, like, by then there was like not a lot of juice for new pornographers. I mean, they like Challengers was fine, then they put out a couple of other ones after that, and you know, I think that like Best New Track in some way was like a little bit of a consolation prize, where it's like, I don't know if this album's gonna be good or whatever, but like, yeah, like let's just kind of keep them, you know, just kind of keep them around, saying like we approve of them, and maybe if the album's whack, it can be a 7 or something like that. But
yeah,
I think that's an example of this. Well, but yeah, gosh, yeah, I would say that, like, and again, I'm speaking just anecdotally. I don't think the new pornographers had a lot of feedback then.
Yeah, we if we had wanted to, we could have structured these, because we're not covering every single song, because that would take too long.
Yes.
And so if we wanted to, we could make these all like every single song in the playlist is a 10 out of 10 like generational song, right? But that would be a less interesting podcast. It'd just be a lot of us being like, this fucking rules. And we wanted to have it be a representational slice of what Pitchfork was covering, and also things that we wanted to talk about. Bands that are not canceled and bummers to talk about, etc.
Yeah, because there's definitely at least one like rock solid 12 out of 10 on this. So
yeah, but
the one thing I'll say about this song, was that at this time I was driving independently a lot, using my parents' car, which had XM radio, and my big introduction to a lot of music at the time, because I was kind of a late streaming service adopter, was XMU, and they rode hard for this song. I was riding hard for new pornographers when I was pretty young, because I think when I decided to become an indie head, which everyone has to do at some point, I guess,
of course,
Twin Cinema was like a really informative album for me, and so when this song came out, I was pretty confused by it, but like, it does, like, going back, it sounds very 2014. This just reminds me of just like a bunch of stuff that was bopping around in 2014. People were a little bit louder, but a little cleaner. It was, I don't know how to like square the circle there, but they were all doing it and it sounded fine. It certainly worked well in the car.
It's like a very different version of like the power pop sort of revival that we're hearing nowadays. It's like a very different approach to that does feel very 2014, as you're saying.
I know people who ride for this album out of all the new pornographers' discography, but I think it's fine. I can't really relate to like riding for it.
Yeah, it's the one of the more non-existent ones. Like, I feel like the one that came after this, Whiteout Conditions, is a little bit more solid.
Yeah, that was a fun record. That's I think it's where I enter the new pornos, like where I start like listening to them for the first time. I'm like, oh, this is pretty solid. And I think I saw them live on that tour because Ott was opening, and it was like the first Ott dates in like 2 years. And I was like, I want to hear what the new stuff sounds like. And then Ott broke up, and new pornos are still a thing. That makes me very sad. A lot of the new pornos are still a thing. I'm just sad that Ott. I'm still sad about last week because I'm like, man, I would want to talk about Ott so much more, but Beautiful Blue Sky never got Best New Track. And Ian Cohen, I'm blaming you for that one. I'm blaming you and you only for not giving Aught Best New Track, even though I don't think you were the one that was writing for Aught the most at Pitchfork at the time.
Yeah,
But,
probably not. I mean, I liked Aught fine, but I am not the most Aught. I am not like the Aught guy in there. And also, if you think I have the power to get anything happening in 2014, you are severely overrating my juice.
There'd be a lot more hotelier on this list.
We could do an entire episode about that one. my failure to get that one over the finish line. So,
but somehow you got this one over the finish line.
Again, this is it takes a village.
Oh, God. But yeah, let's move on. This is a name that, of course, we've been mentioning at various points in the last few episodes because he's kind of becoming an emerging villain of sorts of this season of Best New Pod. Not an emerging villain, but just sort of like,
this is when he was good. That's the thing.
I'm making him my villain.
Yeah, he's again a contentious character already in this season. Of course, we're talking about Mr. Jamie XX and his track "All Under One Roof Raving."
He's kind of never not been a contentious character. I mean, in my life, it's been an interesting art. He's sort of. This happens for all of the crossover dance guys, where it's similar. It's very similar to the dynamic that forms with like metal communities, where it's like people that are in the in-group don't really like the thing that is like the crossover thing. Like Jamie XX is to like UK dance music to what Deaf Heaven is to metal, where like although I would say Deaf Heaven's like a better band as to Jamie XX producer, but like the same sort of like, this was a very formative album for me in that it made me curious to listen to the better music that it's influenced as, and the further I go down the tracks, I sort of understand why other people I know weren't as sort of all in on the hype on him. But even the people that are skeptics will admit that there are some tracks from the kind of peak era that sort of are exceptions that prove the rule. And I think I think that In Color holds up pretty well, but this is not from In Color. This is sort of him leading up to that. It was around the same time he dropped, I think, Girl Sleep Sound. And I liked this song a lot at the time, even though I understand now it's like a little underwhelming. I don't know. This doesn't really go anywhere like propulsive.
Well, as you're talking, the only thing that's cutting through the mix are the steel drums, so it just sort of sounds like we're doing like a Crank That kind of talk over.
The steel drums was his whole thing in this era, and I like it as a melodic choice that he does, but he does kind of repeat the trick all over that album,
right?
Rinse all the use out of it, I think.
Yeah,
I also think. Yeah, go ahead.
I've been thinking about this like because. For what you were saying, like about him being like a villain, because like I mean, In Color, that was like an album. I feel as if there was like a non-zero chance that was going to get a 10, but you know, like, and because of that, you would hear people who are more immersed in the electronic community call like, you know, like kind of similar to Disclosure. Oh, this is like H&M music or whatever. So. I was under the impression that the new album had like just massive flop potential in terms of just getting like savaged, and I don't think that happened. I actually think it's pretty good.
I think it's like pretty fine. Is sort of where I'm at. But as I've discussed in earlier episodes, that's much more of a me and my changing tastes over time thing than it is he has changed. I think he took a little too long to come back with something, and so it's a little like undercooked, overcooked at the same time. But also, it is much better than all of the like one-off singles he put off in the years between that he just sort of used to keep touring festivals. It's okay. I wasn't like completely bummed out by it, but I'm also at the point in my life where when this song came out, I was sort of so unfamiliar with like this song in particular. All the samples are referencing like hardcore and like UK like jungle music and all of that sort of stuff. And the thing that's really funny about this song is musically it is absolutely none of those things.
Yeah, that's the funny part about it all, because I think that's like what people would criticize is that he's talking about like you know, like all this, it alludes to this like very like dirty, like indie, like grimy music, and you know, this is just like Coachella VIP lounge, sort of style style. But I mean, I like this. I've never been to a UK rave, but like I can still enjoy this all the same. I remember I listened to this, and this is around the time that Act Realize. Like I think that's it. Like one of those like I'll listen to any like UK guy like talking over kind of a house track about their days of going to raves. I feel like that's a whole subgenre.
It 100% is, and this is not a terrible execution of that, but it is just a little compared to some. And also, I've heard DJ edits and things like this that to do more interesting things with the melody and the samples on this. But I think it's not a. I think it's only a interesting artifact in like it being like this incredibly hyped like state like that's the thing that hasn't aged well. It's a perfectly fine track, but treating it like it's. I think the thing that's really changed over time is that like Burial is a similar example of someone that's making like headphone music reinterpretations of like dance music, and this is not a non-artful interpretation of that, but it's a way that over time it's like it just feels more simple. It feels like a more obvious sort of trick as opposed to Untrue, which is an album I still love thinking about and being like, how the fuck did he do that, you know? And I don't really have that feeling when I listen to In Color now. I kind of know how he did that, and not to discredit it, he still does it pretty well, but like it's not the like groundbreaking work. It more is just like the right man in the exact right place at the right time with the right cultural touch points to make something that is really hot right now, but not necessarily. I think certain songs from this era, I think one that we'll get to in particular, some of them have lived on really well, and I think this is one that just sort of feels a little bit more like an artifact of the time.
Yeah, I mean,
definitely an inflection point.
Yeah, it's gateway music, you know. Like, I mean,
totally.
Those things are necessary.
Definitely.
All right, Rose, you got your hater hat on. I see you putting it on. Go ahead and cook, Rose, because I actually will probably not disagree with you on whatever you're about to say.
Just this thing. I just so much inertia in there. I just could not. I felt like I was wading through a bog listening to this thing, like just sitting there, like, wait, okay, are we going somewhere? Are we going somewhere? No, I'm good.
It is wild that it's 6 minutes. I think that's really
again just exhausting, severely so. Like I come into this world a Jamie XX skeptic. Like I never got the whole In Color thing, and now the new one came out, and it's just not my thing either. And this is even worse. It's just. I'm feeling very dire about anything XX related.
I was about to say,
you are not under one roof raving. We are not all like that. We are absolutely
no. This is a house divided.
80% under one roof raving. How about that?
Yeah, I can't go to any
more
raves,
like 60.
You know, like it's hard to get back into Jersey after like 10 p.m.
You said 80, Ian. I would say more 60 because I'm also not a big fan of this track, and also Similar Rose never really got the Jamie XX phenomenon, which led to a number of civil wars in the OG Indie Heads podcast chat. Was just me being like, basically having to pretend or at least hide my distaste for the Jamie XX stuff. I just liked, again, he's got plenty of good songs, plenty of good stuff. But like, so I've been listening to a lot of Dean Blunt lately because I'm doing a writing thing about him. So listening to a lot of his tracks and listening to the way that he samples stuff and just sort of diving into his history. And I'm like, I don't know if Dean has ever officially dissed Jamie XX, but there definitely feels like some of the statements he's made, especially during this time period, 2014, 2015, 2016, do feel like, okay, calling out sort of UK producers like this. Obviously, this makes me proud to be British. And one thing that I've noticed about Jamie XX that I think is way more of a problem on the new record, which I feel like we should probably save our thoughts of that for when we get into In Color proper on the 2015 episodes. But I do not like the way that he pulls vocal samples. I'm not sure what it is, whether just the way he's compressing it. Just I don't know engineering terms. All I know is that like I hear the way that he pulls samples, and I'm like, this just does not sound right to my brain. He's not integrating this really well into the song, so it sounds kind of jarring. I do think the song is one of the better versions of that. I would say, like, as I kept listening to the playlist, I was like, okay, I kind of don't mind the vocal samples, but overall, I agree with Rose. I just feel like the track, it just kind of wanders around. And, I listened to Girl/Sleep Sound because we're talking Jamie XX in the chat today, and I think Lily in particular, Lily of course being a former cast member, was like, oh yeah, like that those songs are still really good. And yeah, those songs still hold up. And obviously, as we get in color, we'll see which tracks of those hold up. But yeah, I was we got 3 people that are all under one roof raving, and then me and Rose were just kind of, there's no roof. It's raining on us. The parade is raining. It's just, we're not having a good fun time.
You did not keep it UK. Like I think that's the sense.
I say, Matty, that song is a cousin to the baby father. This makes me proud to be British. Like
yes.
there is a certain similarity. But yeah, no. I think if you're like looking at sort of crossover dance guys on like a continuum to like how cynical sellouty they are versus how genuinely like artistic, like there's Fortet on one end of like someone who's like truly having his cake and eating it too, and then there's like Fred again, who is someone that is like completely dead behind the eyes. Jamie's right in the middle. He's exactly like he has exactly enough like good taste and genuine ambitions to make good stuff to never really make anything that's truly terrible. But I don't know that I'm ever gonna. I think In Color as a record is hard for me to ever really dislike, as we'll get to next week, because it's just like my past enjoyment is baked into it in a way that's true for a lot of music of this era. So even if I can have like a critical part of my brain that rethinks it differently, I'm still kind of me in high school listening to it, so I don't really care.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, again, we will return to Jamie XX on future episodes of just this season in particular.
Jamie XX will return.
Yes,
yeah, sure. Yeah, that was like he's like automatic best new track in this era. So
he was in a way untouchable, which just did make the new review. The fact that it was a full like 2 points lower. Again, we can't get into it. We're getting ahead of ourselves. Right. We got to move on.
I mean, most of the artists in this playlist are pretty much staple ones for a while on Pitchfork, I feel.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And a couple of these are really their introduction to the wide critical landscape. Like this song and another song we're going to talk about later this episode are like the Hello Meet Blank Artist songs, which is a cool thing to get to.
Mm-hmm. Or even Coronations in a way, because I feel like with this next track in particular, she had gotten Best New Track a couple times before this.
Yeah.
But this is the Coronation, and of course,
for the wide audience.
Yes. Also, if I made any negative comments about Jamie XX, if my bosses at Red Eye Worldwide are listening, I was just joking. I love Jamie XX. I love him so much. You should buy all of his records on vinyl. Available now at all independent record stores and online. Again, just go buy that sweet Jamie XX vinyl. That's
buy
just
two.
Buy two.
Maddie, you're allowed to make fun of Jamie XX exactly as much as Two Shell is allowed to make fun of Jamie XX. Okay,
that was so funny. I don't know, Ian, if you missed this, but the electronic pranksters Two Shell did this Instagram post where they did a carousel of like, thank you people for covering our album, and in the carousel of news posts about Two Shell was the Jamie XX Pitchfork score and like a screenshot of it. But then they removed it from the Instagram post, assuming that the label yelled at them for doing so because they're on the same label.
Not real posters, not real posters.
They have become consumed by the label machine, but as we've discussed in the Discord, it's incredibly funny to think about a person whose job it is to have to tell the Two Shell boys to knock it off. Like the person that has to send those emails is so fucking annoyed right now, and I think that's very funny to him. I actually know the person that does their publicity, but that's a different story.
Yes.
For another day.
But it's funny because Jamie XX and Two Shell, they're on the label Young, formerly known as
Perfect
Young
transition.
Turks.
There we go.
Young Turks.
We get the edit out. Yeah, we can't say that name anymore.
Well, I have a funny story about that. Of course, our next track is FK Twigs, 2 Weeks. But before we get into the song itself, I have a very funny
Grizzly
story.
Bear cover.
Oh god. Okay. Train of thought. Gotta get train of thought. God damn it, Ian! You ran over my train of thought.
Was it Young? The record label formerly known
as Young Turks, because this is okay. So Pitchfork Fest 2016. That's my first time at Pitchfork Fest. Had a great time. Of course, first time going to the record fair, and during from 2016 until 2019, I would always go supremely nuts at the record fair. I'd be buying so much shit there. And of course, Beggars had their table there, and they had a hat. They had a Young Turks hat that I wore pretty often for at least 2 or 3 years, until I think one day I wore it around my friend, and my friend was like, Matty, why are you wearing that hat? And I'm like, what hat? This hat? Like, what's wrong with this hat? And she had to like explain, like, hey, like, it's bad. Don't wear that hat.
She had to explain geopolitics to you because
I was like, oh, this is a record label I like. They put out FKA Twigs and stuff. And of course, and like a year or two later, they renamed themselves from Young Turks to Young. And
which
of course,
is a terrible idea because it's just so hard to remember they should have picked a different word or phrase or whatever to fully pivot to, and instead it's like their name is like when Prince was the Symbol, where it was like Symbol, artist formerly known as Prince. Like there's like a half of a formerly known as always when people are talking about them that just makes it kind of clunky.
Yeah,
well, there's also Bjork's label, which changed their name from One Little Indie into One Little Independent.
Oh my god!
But at least that one still like kind of works. Like they still found a way to make it like okay, it still has the same kind of like cadence as you would saying the offensive name, whereas Young they just cut it off.
It's giving Blessed Madonna.
No, I was gonna say what it's giving is Best Coast updating boyfriend with different pronouns.
Yeah,
oh my god,
that song came up like because I had that on a mix from 2010 and it updated accidentally on iTunes or Apple Music, and I'm like, what the. But I'm just like the like FKA Turks was right there for them to use, and they just did not pull that off, you know.
Mm-hmm. But speaking of FKA, of course, we're talking about FKA Twigs.
This is an incredible song that we're just tangenting off of. But
the first thing that stood out to me is that we can see the monthly listeners, and she has 2.7 million, which is about like 1/9 of that of Surf Curse. Like just to think of it. I'm just like a little surprised about that. Like, I mean, I know she's like extremely popular, but
it is fascinating. I know what you mean. She still is very much. She's exactly where Charlie was a couple of years ago, where she is the critics' person's pop act, and she does have some appeal, but like. The Twigs stan army on Twitter is not exactly as multiplicitous as some of the other ones, you know. It's more just like it's more music nerds that don't really have a huge pop icon. But I do think it's sort of
it's gay guys with topsters in their pinned tweet.
Yes, 100%. Nailed it. Thank you for cutting through the bullshit, Devin. That's exactly what it is. I think this new record. I don't think this new record. It's certainly not going to be her brat because it's like. More electronic.
What do you mean, Jackie? You think it's going to be a eusexual summer? Well, it's winter.
I was thinking that because like this person I work with, they're a huge Charlie XCX and Ethel Cain fan, so it's like, oh yeah, going to be Pervert's Winter or whatever it is, you know, like the transition works.
I think FK. That's the thing is though, I do actually think at any moment FKA Twigs could reach a much wider audience, especially if she made more tracks like this one that is truly one of her more like sort of traditional ballad appealing tracks. But it is also like
Silent Hill strip club music.
Yeah, this I think in ways that people like James Blake and The Weeknd more actively just get credit for. Like this is the blueprint for like just so much music I've heard in the last 10 years, like a crazy amount of music I've heard. And it's still the fact that this still feels as fresh as it does is really how you could. It really is what stands the test of time. Is like the stuff that still not only sounds like all that other stuff, but still it doesn't decrease any of the value or make it feel like of its era or whatever. It feels like this could come out tomorrow and be really well received.
I think in the long view, what this album, and this could be way off the mark, is that it makes me think of like, you know, because I was alive when this album came out, like the first Portishead album, like where you get the set or like Massive Attack, if you prefer that, where it like creates this entire scope of, you know, for lack of a better term, like kind of like sexy or like air quotes sexy music. And then like you get so tired of it because like for the next 10 years, you hear all these like terrible approximations of, you know, whatever you call what she does, trip hop. And then you listen to that. It's like, oh, right. The blueprint like still holds up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. To me, my kind of like music writery way of describing what I think this album was doing synthesis wise is like vespertine art pop plus Janet Jackson.
Yeah.
It's like exactly in the
Yes.
middle of two, but we're already two very critically acclaimed things, and finding a way to genuinely fuse them into something that then, of course, became the blueprint for not only some of the actual best music of the next couple of years, but also a lot of like pop stars that want to feel a little artier, like sprinkling some FKA Twigs vibes on top of their stuff.
Mm-hmm. And also, we obviously Twigs. I believe Twigs herself produced this track, but also like with Twigs too, only being a great songwriter, also just someone that had a good ear for production. Obviously, with the for EP2, I think was entirely produced or co-produced with Arca, and then this one also just again a ton of producers that were on the cutting edge at this point that would go on to be like much bigger names later on within the decade of just moving on to either bigger pop stars or just continue to work with many people, like, but again, we'll get more into that when we, of course, it's not the only FK Twigs song we're talking about tonight, so
what like Charlie is for the full-on PC music people is what FKA Twigs is to me, where like every time she announces an album, it's like with one of my guys, like Corliss, and I'm just like, hell yeah. He did the first track on Capri Songs, and I love the idea of people using him for pop production because he's so good at like ornate detail, even though his music is not at all pop leaning in any way.
Actually, who co-produced this one? I'm curious if I can. Let's see, FKA Twigs. Let's see, produced by FKA Twigs, Emil Haney. Yep, there you go. Emily Haney. So that, because I believe
that's a 2014 name.
Yep, of course. I think at this point he was already pretty well established, but would continue to go on to be like dominating within the pop sphere and the indie sphere for quite some time. But yeah, no, fantastic track. Also, fucking incredible video. Jesus Christ, like one of the defining videos of the 2010s, like, because it wasn't just the music itself with FKA Twigs, it was just seeing someone, relatively new to the scene that had a fully formed artistic identity. There was no like, oh, this is an artist discovering herself. Like, no, this is someone that like had it figured out very, very quickly. And her career since then has just been like continuing to build upon this identity that she's built for herself. Of sort of, finding the sort of the oblique, the just the obtuse sides of sort of glitz and glamour and stuff. Obviously with the album cover itself, because of course, God, because it's the person who did the album art for this also did like a bunch of Arca's album artwork at this time.
Oh, that totally makes sense. I'm trying to remember. I don't know off the top of my head. I'll look it up.
But
Devon, do you have anything else to say about this track?
This was one of the things that also made it to Sirius XMU, which is kind of incredible. Not necessarily, I mean, it's a sign that like this kind of level of experimental was acceptable also to like a relatively normal non-commercial audience. So definitely a sign that like this fully formed star was on the way. And then she's continued obviously to make such interesting visuals. Her dancing is central to what she does as an identity. And then it's been interesting to watch the rollout for Eusexua. I was obviously a big Magdalene person. I think people are kind of going back to Magdalene and wondering if it was slightly overrated, which I will leave that up to people to decide. I will always stand it. And then the Eusexua stuff. She's got another song coming out in 2 days, and she put out a snippet today with the video that seemed like kind of taboo in a like fetish and rubber and gagging kind of way, which I think people like the gay guys in my orbit are kind of like, isn't this a little tired? And so I'm wondering if maybe FKA Twigs is about to get womaned.
I just learned what that phrase means thanks to MJ Lenderman, by the way.
I will never let that happen. So Twigs Army.
And Matty, it's Jesse Kanda.
Oh yeah.
Who did work with Arca most famously.
And also I feel like with the, I guess the normalization of this sound, like for better or worse, obviously I think Yeezus kind of helped break some barriers when, having someone as popular as Kanye kind of introduce these sounds to a mainstream audience. So when like FK Twigs is breaking through, like, oh, hey, here's this album that has Arca production on it and other producers that are sort of in that lane coming through and making stuff like this. That is,
we're going to talk about something later about this when we get to a friend of Cymbals the guitars, but like there was this whole era of time, and Matt last week on our what was it called, on our bonus episode that we did with Larry, he was talking about the very real phenomenon of just like certain people needed to get introduced into the critical consensus by their adjacency to other people, and that leading to like Arca might as well have been named Kanye collaborator Arca for like several years at a time there, right?
Saffelstein or whatever.
Because Saffelstein's another great example of someone that people just like, Kanye might as well have been his first name for a while, Kanye collaborator. That was like a very common way that something that was sort of somewhat left of center in presentation, but also with some amount of crossover appeal, was sold to the masses. This is that person, that famous person you likes. You know?
Yeah. It worked out. Great track. But again, we will return to FKA Twigs later on in this episode. But moving into our next track, oh God. So, we of course we're already doing, we have the three things at the end of the episode: favorite song, least favorite, most 2014. I was going into this playlist, I was not expecting this to be the most 2014 on the playlist, but unfortunately it is Young Thug, ASAP Ferg, Freddie Gibbs with Old English. This is of course one of many, this is a time where you have media companies like trying to repeat the Adult Swim model of like, oh hey, Adult Swim did this, and so we can do this too. And so Mass Appeal tries to pull this off by getting, all these cool up and coming rappers on one song. And of course at the time, Jackie and I being rap forum veterans, of course, this song was a huge anthem for us rap forum readers. But now that we're 10 years later, I hate to break it to y'all, I think this song is aged like fucking milk. I think this song.
This song is aged like milk. 2014 ASAP Mob Posse cut is not aged well. Like Jesus, man. Your next thing you're gonna tell me that Run the
capsule.
Next thing you're gonna tell me that like Run the Jewels 2 sounds just as good in 2024 and just as fresh.
We're getting there next week.
That's next week.
I totally get what you mean, but I am very much with Devon in that this is no one involves best work, but it makes me warm and fuzzy just because I think, even though it had to happen through like a Mass Appeal trying to do a single series sort of thing, I think it is emblematic of a thing that I miss, which is like all of the different rap scenes feeling like, even though there are all these different like flavors and styles, they are all kind of aspiring to be part of a collective rap consciousness. Whereas now it's like, I feel like Xavier So Based and Rock Marciano like exist in like different universes. These are three artists that have like different fan bases and different appeals, but they're not so different that they can't like come together and make a song that like a lot of rap fans like,
Oh, absolutely.
And I think this is just also like all three of these artists are sort of at different phases of like being coronated, and whether it's Freddie Gibbs, who's like a guy that had been around for a while but just that year had put out Pinata, which I wish we were talking about something from that record instead of this, just because that's like one of the best rap albums of the decade, if not the best one. But like it's Freddie Gibbs, who's a guy who's been around for a while, but like getting in GTA and then doing one album with Madlib all of a sudden turned him into like a later in life guy. And then you have like on the other side like Young Thug just sort of emerging into full form. And I think Young Thug steals the show here pretty clearly, which is not an uncommon thing to happen in the mid 2010s. I also like this beat. Salva and Nick Hook produced this, and they are guys to me in a big way, in that both of them serve the exact same role of like being this connector figure between like underground electronic music at the time and like rap stuff. Nick Hook has an album in like 2017, I think, that has like a whole bunch of features on it and is basically an album about like all the different people that come through Nick Hook's studio. It's like a concept album where just a million people and producers are on it. It's got like DJ Rashad, Black Cray, Hudson Mohawk, Spank Rock, Jungle Pussy, Novelist, I Love McConan. It's a great record. Like 21 Savage is on there. Nasty Nigel, Bulletproof Dolphin, just these random Mayhem Lorraine.
You made that last one up, Jackie.
No,
Come on.
No,
Matty,
these are all very real names. Like
this is the 2016 album Relationships. It also features Michael Christmas, DJ PayPal, and one or two other names. But yeah, no, it's a wild.
There it is.
But like that's exactly
preview 73. Wow.
It's just like a who's who of like
Spank Rock.
It's a record that is shockingly like cohesive as a listen, for the fact that it's truly like a what the fuck are all of these people doing in the same room type of.
Chino Moreno's in there.
Hell yeah.
Hello?
Chino Moreno's like just him.
Yeah,
I guarantee he paid for that beat placement. Like he wants to be down, and that's one of the things I love about Chino. He wants to be down so bad, man.
Chino right next to DJ Rashad is truly a like I can't believe it. You know those like memes where it's like I can't believe these two historical figures were alive at the same time.
I'll tell you what. I remember making a mix in 2013. Like I do this like every month, and I had Romantic Dreams right next to Feelin'. Like those two bled into each other surprisingly well.
Hell yeah! I love that record, but that's just like it's a very good. I wanted to read off all those names because I think it paints a picture of like those two guys, as neither of them were ever really like crossover appeal dance music guys in the way that like Hudson Mohawk was, but these are classic behind the scenes connector type figures. And so the fact that they were involved in this song is like very, very, very fitting in terms of them being guys that could work with Freddie Gibbs and A$AP Ferg and Young Thug, and it makes sense in all cases.
Yeah, I should clarify my comments. This is just going to get more people to yell at me, but at least it will make things more clear.
Yes.
Famously, I'm not a Young Thug fan. I never got it at the time. I still don't get it. So
I yell at you about it on a regular basis.
Yes.
You don't have to relitigate it.
Yes, and we'll yell about it more because, of course, we are talking more Young Thug as the season goes on. So I think that's part of it. Freddie Gibbs verse is good, and then Ferg, this is
a weaker Ferg verse for sure.
Yeah.
I think that is the part of the song that has aged the worst.
You don't
Absolutely.
have yams. You don't have yams in there, and yams is a good accentuator.
Yeah. R.I.P. man.
I'm realizing this now, and I'm not sure if this is a good comparison or not. I don't think it's going to play to most anyone that's on this podcast. A$AP Yams is kind of like the Paul Heyman of hip hop, right? Like someone that was so extraordinarily good.
Yeah, Matty, you're the only wrestling fan in this podcast.
But we people who like wrestling listen to this, they'll get it.
That's true.
But Paul Heyman, again, wrestling booker, he was very good. He was very cutting edge and very good at accentuating the positives of people that were otherwise either not very good or mediocre, and then just getting out the negatives. And you take that away from Ferg, and Ferg is fine, but it's clear the trap board was like, oh, this is Yams doing like A&R God work, right? On that album. And then when you take Ferg out of that context, it doesn't quite work out as well. But again,
he had one gear,
yes.
And after you lose someone who was very good at putting him in the exact right positions, I think he makes perfect sense with both of these artists, but I think what this beat is calling for is something a little more laid back, menacing, and A$AP Ferg only knows how to do like aggro, full steam ahead, like run you over. And that's just not what this song was calling for, like at all, but he doesn't really have the range to deliver something else, and so it just sort of feels like he's forcing it.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's go ahead and move on. Of course, next song is, so I had the wrong version. There's a different Shmoney dance on Spotify, but thankfully I realized before we recorded, at least a few days. So I was like, okay, I've actually listened to the proper song, which is Rowdy Rebel, Shmoney Dance featuring Bobby Shmurda. Of course,
this was neither of the songs I briefly thought it was going to be, because it is not either of the most famous, and I'm sure we'll talk about those too, but I mean, it's really hard to say this now, but most 2014 song, it's a closed race, folks. It is.
Yeah.
There's just none other on this list that is more of a time machine, you know?
Mm-hmm. This was another one that I also had to look at. Like, who wrote the track review for this one? And
yeah, that
Ian,
was definitely me.
It was you.
That one I definitely remember. Just saying some dumb shit, but God, I fucking love this song so much.
It's great.
I listen to this to this day. The first half of, like, the first 4 or so songs on the Shmoney Shmurda mixtape, and I realize I sound like an asshole saying that, but like, it's like Shiesty Time, then this, then I think Computers is next.
Computers is the one that I went back to when I went back to them today. Computers is I think that's the best song either of them were ever involved with. I think the meme itself has lived so long that it says a lot how long Tom Cruise that Tom Cruise has lived on in the cultural consciousness.
I will put I haven't heard the second half of that mixtape yet. I don't think there's a lot of range there, but that like 10 minutes. It's like the Tonight EP where it's like 10 minutes of like the most like just get wild. Like I can lift a bus and like play it like an accordion, and it's still 10 years later. I still feel the same way. I'll just like throw this on. I love this song so much.
Yeah,
it's very fun.
This is a real time capsule. I definitely think Computers is the one I remember the most fondly. I think it's tough to. I think that's definitely the best Bobby Shmurda verse, especially like. But I think watching the music video for this was a good reminder that a lot of Bobby Shmurda's appeal was his music video appeal. Like, not just because of the hat dance meme, but because he is just an incredibly compelling person to look at in a music video context. He's just got that like charisma, like the camera loves him sort of thing. It's really undeniable. There's like there's like a GIF per music video from this era that like will live forever. There's one from this music video of him like doing like this kind of a dance that I've seen a million times.
Yeah, no, it's just like the thing I appreciate about this and most of the Bobby Shmurda stuff from this era is you could just hear it sounds like he's having a lot of fun doing it. Like it's a real good time.
Like this was like kind of a cul-de-sac, whereas like Old English, like these guys continued to make, I think for lack of like old head music, like premature old head rap, whereas like this kind of lives solely in 2014, which is kind of why I enjoy it more than like something like Old English or Run the Jewels or like stuff that was like big in 2014, but like kind of people who would play like fourth line down from the top of the Coachella festival or like that sort of thing.
Because like Old English for Better or Worse is a song where you can tell there's a lot of hands in the pots being like, oh, like what if we put these guys on this song and we get these producers to produce it. This is just like, okay, this is just genuine expression of the moment of the time.
Old English, I think positively and negatively is like kind of one of the most Red Bull Music Academy songs of all time, right? Like it is just the peak of that. Like it's kind of corporate, but it's for pretty cool stuff. So like, do we really want to get mad at it? Not really, like that's kind of the whole vibe of that song. Whereas this is truly like, these guys are just having a real fun time. I mean, I remember at the time thinking of Bobby Shmurda being in prison as much more of a like rap history what if that it kind of feels like now that, but I also think that like he kind of got screwed over just in the sense that like non-Chicago drill was just starting to take off on like a country. This is like long before Pop Smoke and long before like any of these other kind of regional scenes, and I'm not the person to give an expert opinion on that. I don't think anyone here is, but like I do think that like when you're in that kind of a scene that is so much about being on the cutting edge, losing like the couple of peak years you would have after your initial hit is just like really screws you over. But I haven't checked in with any of the Bobby Shmurda music post him getting out of jail, and I don't think anyone else.
It doesn't
really
hit nearly the same.
Okay,
that's unfortunate, but that's also what I expected. It's just like there are people that have lived with these songs long enough that they have taken the most fun interpretations of them off in their own directions. And when he got back around, there wasn't a lot of wasn't a lot for him to do on 2022's Bod Boy, which I have not listened to.
The thing that I read a couple times to kind of put myself back in this mindset was actually Tom Bryan's retrospective on Panda, the designer song.
Yeah.
And so
God,
like
that one was good.
that being sort of like the song that reached number one from this like mid-decade, streaming services have popped off, the Dat Piffs like priming of the pump for rap fans to use big streaming services that feed into Billboard, etc., all that good stuff. And so like GS9 and everything from this era kind of like rode that wave too, but not quite in the same way. And so like it's all this stuff that's priming the pump and was essentially the soundtrack of my getting into college and partying the most. It's just these viral rap hits that
like Trinidad James.
Yes. And this one happened to be one that was actually like sonically on the cutting edge compared to others that may or may not have stood the test of time. I would say most of the hits have stood the test of time, but like as far as like actual talents, like sure, I would say these guys are probably in that sort of school of things, like the ones at the top of the pyramid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not to dunk on Fetty Wap, but Fetty Wap had a very like the easy commercially crossover appeal. He had a very like friendly likability to him, you know, and I don't think that's what this was. And it also was a little more sonically cutting edge, like you're saying. Like it is, especially all of the all of like the like B and C tier Bobby Shmurda hits are like even more aggressive than the initial breakout hit, and kind of predict a lot of where like even rage rap and stuff like that was gonna go. You kind of can hear some of that in the Bobby Shmurda stuff, but yeah, it's fascinating as a time capsule, you know.
And also this is a time where like obviously Shmurda gets signed by a major label, and like not to say that major labels are like good now at doing this, but it felt like when you have these emerging scenes that are popping off on the internet, major labels at this time just
Matty,
with very few exceptions. Of course, you know the video that video is popped right in your head.
You just put it in my brain. Yes, exactly.
The video of him dancing the whole time. Yeah,
the video of him dancing in front of the record executives. It is one of the like the most. It's horrible.
I always think about him is that I think of him as being like one of the early snippets artists where I remember being very disappointed by the CDQ of Bobby Bitch after watching the Vine where the like hook of Bobby Bitch is about like there was a snippet of the song before it came out, and really I think this is a testament to what I was saying earlier about his visual charisma. I didn't like that song. What I liked is how Bobby Shmurda looked while all of his friends were jumping up and down while the chorus of his song was about to play. Like he was really good at communicating that excitement to you, the listener, via Vine and what have you. And
remember Vine?
Saying the word Vine is already, it's like 2014 song of the week. It's locked. It's wrapped. Like it's over.
There's a reason we kind of when doing rap form veterans, we pretty much stop around the time that Vine rap really begins to take off, or at least we don't talk about it too much. But back to the point I was making, at this time, major labels just for some reason, especially really bad at like just maintaining the careers of people that popped off on the internet. For like every ASAP Rocky or even like a Kendrick, you would have a Krayshawn, you would have a Bobby Shmurda, where they have no fucking idea what to do with them, and they're like, I don't know, you do this instead. And it's like, no, like you're getting the wrong people in their ears. And of course with Bobby Shmurda, that never really got to fully happen, of like major labels like really fucking up his career, because obviously that was not the main reason his career got fucked up. But it definitely didn't help either. But
totally.
But yeah. Let's move on, if we're all good to move on to our next track. These next three songs especially, fucking what the fuck? This is crazy. For me, this is the run of this episode for me.
Oh, okay.
For me. But again, the rest of this playlist is very, very good. But these next three songs for me are like, oh shit, all right, I boot up, I activate.
With you on two of them. We'll get to one of them later. But yes, I'm very much with you. Earlier I spoke of Hello World Meet This Person songs. This is the Hello World Meet Perfume Genius song, unquestionably. And probably still like the Perfume Genius song.
Yes.
I would say.
I think
I'd argue that what's the
Slip
one
Away.
off
Slip
of No
Away.
Shape? Slip Away.
That was in a movie. That's the one from.
That's
What was that
fair.
movie? That was in Booksmart, right? It was in like.
I think it was.
It was a trailer for some movie. I can't remember which one, but I
weeks in a
know.
row or was that 2 weeks ago that we? Yeah, 2 weeks ago we invoked Booksmart on the Run the Jewels.
And we're
1
gonna do
episode.
it again next week because it's RTJ2 week.
Oh yeah,
Oh, my
yeah.
God.
That movie. It was like high schoolers listening to 2013 Pitchfork Best New Music in like 2017. Wild stuff.
I've spoken about it before, not just in terms of the music taste, but it really was a oh god moment for me as someone who grew up going to private schools in Los Angeles, California. I felt seen in the worst way possible.
Huh.
Like, oh god, this is what I'm like. Am I this annoying, etc. Yeah, that movie is a fascinating cultural object. But I think Perfume Genius. I think this song is a kind of perfect introduction to how Mike is like bridging the gap between sort of a glam rock thing and where Slip Away gets more to, which is more of that kind of like ornate art pop arch kind of thing that becomes more and more of a thing sort of as this decade goes on. And I really think of Perfume Genius as being kind of one of the forebearers of this being like a big part of the cultural establishment, is this particular kind of like arty glam pop music that is just very appealing but also very unique in its own way. Also, speaking of ASAP Yams, I had this thought as we're listening to this episode, in the Hall of Fame of musician posters of the 2010s.
Yeah,
this is an introduction
Griffey,
to
Mariano Rivera, 99% vote. Yeah,
Hall of Famer, unquestionably Mike Hadrius. You have put up great work in your time on Twitter.com, and the day that it shuts down, I will be trying to find many tweets about his iPad.
Oh god, yeah, one of the preeminent musician posters. In this era, it's him, obviously Yams. Ezra was posting a lot this time. Ezra Koenig was doing some.
I think he's the person I think of most when I think about someone having a posting persona that is like almost hilariously in contrast with what their actual music is, right? Like, it almost feels like Perfume Genius needs to be funny as a public persona to not make us feel vulnerable about his music, you know? Like, don't worry, I'm a silly guy.
I mean, if you do remember Pitchfork at this time, I believe their readers poll had a section where you could fill out like best Twitter poster.
I think or best tweet. I do recall that vaguely.
This was like a regular fixture for a few years in some of their end of year coverage, and I found it so fascinating how like Mike was a consistent winner in that, and it's pretty easy to see, like, good poster, and like furthermore just unbelievable musician. Like, he's had a run of albums over the last 2 years. I think they've all been really solid. Like, I have not yet seen a real dud in the Perfume Genius catalog.
Definitely not. Definitely,
and this is like the good invocation at the start of the run. It's, it's the album you kind of hope for is a good coronation of like, this is the guy.
I believe this album was his second album to get a Best New Music.
Third, maybe.
I think it was a third.
It was his third album overall and second to get a Best New Music, and then every album since has also gotten one,
Best New Music,
except for the remix album. But that's
a remix album. That's that.
Yes,
not non-canonical. Non-canonical.
Come on, like
we were talking about that. Was it the one we were talking about?
I think it was Deer Hunter that had we were looking at their track reviews, and there was like
iTunes Live at Soho.
Yeah, the
getting an 8.1, and it's like, this is not just another live album, which I believe that was a Larry Fitzmaurice review, and of course we had him on the podcast the next week.
Right. God, if you had me and Larry on the same fucking podcast, the lore, Jesus.
I mean, we would just let you guys cook. We would just let you guys cook. We wouldn't say anything. It's like, because but also I feel like it would be dangerous, because tea would get spilled. Lawsuits would be filed. But this song, fucking incredible track. This is, of course, at this time, I think this at this point, I'm fully on r/indie heads. I'm a regular poster. I'm constantly on the lookout for stuff, and this is one of the songs that got posted at the time. They're just like broke my brain. Like, oh shit, this is a rewiring of the brain moment. And yeah, like incredible track, great record. Like record I listened to today,
absolutely.
Still holds up, still a fantastic record. Some really obviously really fantastic songs on here. My Body's amazing. I love that song. I love Long Pig, Grid. My God, this is
a good song. Like
Fool's
a funny song. I think that like that it's like that. I think Fool's the one song that kind of shows like his sense of humor, like from Twitter, like but like within the scope of the music. But yeah, that it's yeah. I find Perfume genius out. Like I mean, I know how this is gonna sound. Like I love the singles, and then like the kind of ballads like kind of wash over me. But I think Too Bright's the one that like connects the most for me.
Yeah, I wouldn't say like I think obviously when we get into season 3, because of course we're getting in, AAA gets Best New Track in 2017, so we'll get into that record a little more when we inevitably get to season 3. But yeah, I would say this is probably his most consistent record overall, even if it does not like have the really high highs that No Shape has for me. But yeah, really fantastic record, fantastic song. What else is there to say?
The thing about this song that I always forget about, like, this is a song where I really think about the very beginning of it, right? The Don't You Know Your Queen and the big low note, and then I always forget about that high little twinkly part that comes in. And every time it's like a little surprise,
That's the part I always whistle along to when I'm listening to this.
It's the part that makes it like a catchy song and not just this kind of plodding ballad. It's like at first you think you're in for this like very dramatic, very slow thing, and then just is like relax. Here's a nice little ditty to keep this song from being like kind of overwhelmingly emotional. It sort of just like lifts you up a little bit.
Yeah, it is funny that this became like an empowerment anthem in a way, even though it's a song about how it's a song for the evil gays by the evil gays, which I think is great. There should be more evil gay music out there.
Classic thing to happen is a queer person makes like a nuanced and multifaceted piece of art, and then the press coverage is like, honestly, work. Like.
If Mayor Pete was smarter, he would have probably picked this song as like some sort of like campaign anthem, but instead he went with High Hopes, which is infinitely funnier to me in this podcast, and I think overall for the culture. The 2020 primaries, horrible time that we all invested way too much attention and effort into, and then we're still suffering the consequences of. But we're we're still in 2014, baby. It's 2014. I'm in high school. Things are good. I'm on r/indieheads. I'm discovering all this great music, including our next song from fucking Iceage. It's the Lord's favorite. This is a tough one. This is going to be a week where I'm not going to do a tie and be like, oh, actually 4 songs are my favorite this week. I will have a definitive pick, but man, it's tough because I forgot how much I fucking love this song.
This song is wonderful.
This week.
This song is incredible.
It's so good, and like in a way, it does feel because it's obviously not an alt country song, but it does feel like a little bit ahead of the curve of the alt country scene that was going on with that. A little bit of a twang to it, even though of course these are from the Danish, who I don't think they know anything about twang or country.
He loves Townes Van Sant. He's got a Townes Van Sant cover on his solo album.
That's right. Yeah,
I know Denmark. Like, and again, this is a bit off the grid, but like I heard that like Band of Horses is enormous in Denmark. I hear that Denmark is super into
Europeans love American shit in the way that Americans love your vaguely European shit. Like once you learn, it was a real like unlearning of my Anglophilia when I realized that British people are super into like Americana and rockabilly. It's you just like the thing because it's different, and that's what I'm doing to Britain. Like, Britain isn't cool, it's just not America, and so, like, distance makes things feel a little more strange and different, but, like, yeah.
I was in London, like, last week, and you would see that, like, the American chain restaurants were super popular. They had this one place called Cheat Meals, and it was like, we served burgers, fries, hot dogs, like just all these quote unquote American foods, but like they made it at like almost like a Chipotle kind of elevated thing. But yeah, rockabilly's still enormous, but also that's true of Orange County. So
Yeah.
I was just gonna say that music-wise, the thing that this reminded me of is that Geese album that came out, where they're trying to like mix the post-punk and the alt country, and similar to there, I don't think this worked at all for me personally, is where I come at it from. I'm someone that got on the Iceage train a little later and then kind of got off of it pretty quickly. I really like Beyondless. I think that record is fantastic and is the first time that the way people write about Iceage and how I hear Iceage in my ears has like fully synced up. But for the most part, they were never a band that I was not on the hype train of these three records that received Best New Music. Leading up to, I was very aware of this record as someone that was watching Anthony Fantano by this time, but it did not grab me at the time. And by the time I was like into music like this, I was not enough of a fan of Iceage specifically. I like them more when I can see them perform because their lead singer is very hot, and I put up with his vocals more when I can see him and less when I can't see him. Is kind of how I feel.
Yeah, I mean, if we got like 3 people at least here who like Iceage, this will be like the first time in my life I've met 3 people who at the same time like Iceage, because the discrepancy between like, and again, like I think I reviewed this track. I actually kind of like this song, but yeah, just the discrepancy between like the institutional support for Iceage and their like utter lack of ability to translate outside of that is just always a source of hilarity. I don't think they've ever not gotten Best New Music. They're like the band that like always gets Best New Music and doesn't make the year-end list.
Yeah, because Seek Shelter famously, because at the time I was working their college radio campaign. Of course, it comes out, does well college radio, and then gets Best New Music, which I was surprised by. I was like, because I think at that point, Deer Hunter had finally ended their Best New Music streak, and I was like, okay, this record, it's not as good as the last one. This is a pretty obvious time to jump off the train, but for some reason, got Best New Album, but of course did not make the year-end list. Which I didn't love Seek Shelter. It was a little too Rolling Stones for me as someone that is not a big Rolling Stones fan. But of course, as Jackie said, Elias Ronfelt is cool. He's hot, and he also loves Dean Blunt. He's been on a number of Dean Blunt songs over the years, and so for that, he gets my eternal respect forever. Because
what was that song that he covered that you like? The Iceage guy.
What wasn't it?
He did. There's a fantastic song. Yeah, fantastic
I don't
cover
think
of
it's
Pull Up.
Fantastic.
I fucking love the Pull Up cover. I think it was one of my favorite songs of 2022.
It's not that it's bad, but that like it's better than it has a right to be, but don't mistake that for it being good,
I think it's great.
The thing I'll also say about Iceage is that so they've had the same manager and producer since the beginning. This guy Nis Bisted, who runs Esho, that
that's right,
record label that's been putting out stuff from like Melina and Fina, and they did the first Smurs album and Astrid Son. Like when I talked to Nis a couple months ago, he had a really formative experience in the United States. I think he was like, he came over to like help this band do a tour, and then it got canceled, but they were already over there. So he just bopped around the US for a couple weeks and like witnessed what a DIY scene is like. And so has like been something of an American indie head for 20 years at this point. So the idea that like maybe him and these Iceage guys are sort of like geeking out over the same nonsense, but like through their own prism, makes a lot of sense for some of the things that they kind of either predict or like do a little bit different that really kind of resonates with critics who are like, oh, this tastes a little bit different.
When I listen to that Geese record as a comparison, I have the exact same reaction to this song that I had to the single from that record, which is that I'm listening to it the whole time, and by the end of it, I'm like, I still don't know whether I like that or dislike that. I'm going to run that back, and then I'm listening again, and I still don't know, and I'm not turning it off, so I don't hate it. but I still can't like get behind it and endorse it. And I'm just sort of like, it tastes different is exactly the way I'm like, this isn't boring. Do I like it? I'm not really sure. That's kind of my whole like thought process. And this has been for me my entire life, the band that has like introduced the concept to me of more interesting to write about than they perhaps are to listen to is kind of my verdict on them overall. Like when they're really good, they are really good. And there are brief moments of time where like I get the hype, but for the most part, I think it's more that like people like the idea of songs like this being like, it's sort of like if the Feelies were a jug band. Like you can say cool quippy, like
that's what the streets are asking for. Like Feelies, but I mean, yeah, they're a band with
if your
like,
friend group isn't discussing.
I mean, the comparison point
network is your net
most
worth.
think of is like, for some reason, this most reminds me of Against Me's Pints of Guinness Make You Strong.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yes. There's a lot like Iceage, like if their popularity matched like their acclaim, they'd be like amongst the, I don't know how to put this better, but like kind of neckbeard, like tattooed, like 2014 bar guys, like the same people who like, yeah, like I can't think of a way to put it. Like the people who might like high vis now, sort of, or Idols, right? Like Idols kind of absorbed what Iceage was supposed to be vaulted towards. And yeah, I just think they're a band with like good taste, and I think that always carried the day for them. They're like, and they're also like, extremely hot and they have good taste, and like they just it's like, oh yeah, this is what a rock band, and like this, the inability for them to like resonate with like a larger audience is, whether it's from Denmark or whatever it is. I mean, like if they only got like best new music half the time, I probably wouldn't clown them as much as I do. But like, the sort of people who liked Iceage were the sort of people who wouldn't take like Joyce Manor seriously, because that's kid music. So you're seeing like the old grudges emerge.
Just call me out by name, why don't you?
If that was the case for you while you were in high school, you would have been a better fit at Pitchfork than me.
I think they've always been an interesting band. I think the reason why I like Beyond This so much is that's the first album of theirs that feels like it has songs that I can like picture in my head right now and sort of think of the tune of them vaguely, like that's a record where comparing them to, I think that record to me kind of feels like the closest they ever get to doing an Afghan Wigs kind of thing, which is really what I would like this band to be and sound like.
I wish they were dumber. That's what you were like. I wish they would just be kind of like dumber and like more Greg Dooley with it, But maybe they're just like too pretty.
They should take all of these same like arch American influences, but then just not make the songs about anything other than getting drunk and saying a stupid thing to a woman. Like that's really where they should be projecting their energy.
Exactly.
God.
Yeah, I say. Afghan Wigs could do like Take It All or Lord's Favorite, but like Iceage could not write, say, like 66.
Oh, of course, no, they don't have that pitch in their arsenal, exactly.
Yeah, and I think like we brought up Viagra Boys earlier, and I think that's kind of where Viagra Boys like have been able to like really live and been able to be like more successful now than Iceage, because again they just embrace the dumbest parts of their influences, and it's clearly paid off in a big way. Again, Elias Ronfelt again knows ball, and for that I respect him greatly. Even if it doesn't always translate to the music.
He should be more meat-headed is like the he needs to make his I don't know what the right comparison is, but
Grinder. They need to go Grinder Man with it.
Yeah, head empty.
I will say this is I re-listened to this record today because I will say, despite me being pretty positive on the song, I was never the biggest Iceage fan of, I guess, the vaguely post-punk scene that was going on at this time. They were not my favorites. I liked some songs here and there. But this record, I would say, holds up pretty well. It's a pretty solid record that is a lot funner, and I liked it a lot more than I anticipated going in for the re-listen. Although, again, very 2014. Like, if this comes out today, nothing happens. Like, I don't even, like, at least Geese have, like, internet nerds going crazy, as me and Rose are very aware.
Yeah, they do.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
I'm
from just
learning.
being a
Yeah,
modern
no,
person
they
idiots.
ride hard for that band.
Yeah, that was.
I'm learning, like, because I mean, that's like one of the reasons I was excited to come onto this show, because I don't know what's going on in like the bowels of like who's really popping, you know. And Geese apparently is one of those bands. I'm learning.
Yeah, Geese has shooters. I mean, the
I'm trying
band.
to think who is the Geese fan? Because I do they're not quite where, like, obviously the Geese Goose jokes are plenty, and there is something almost jam adjacent going on their new record where it like starts to dip into this like Dave Matthews bag that I'm just so confused by. But also
I'm just really fascinated because they have like they're doing like 3 nights at a venue here, and like multiple bands of pretty decent stature, like Water from Your Eyes is opening for them, Gorilla Toss.
that's the thing, is that they have a reputation as being like, among music jorks that are interested in like bands playing really well and being good live bands, like Geese are beloved among a certain kind of like East Coast internet music nerd person.
People love classic rock. They love shit like Bowie,
and
and they want bands
other
that sound
bands
bad.
like them. That's the other thing, is that like them playing those shows with Water from Their Eyes, they are just like sort of enmeshed in that whole like cool New York band world of now. They're really young too. I liked their first record a little more when they were just clearly trying to sort of do a little bit of sprinkle a little more Interpol dust on there.
Yeah.
There's way less on that in the new record, even if it is definitely more interesting. Like the last record was boring in a way that pandered to me, and this is interesting in a way that doesn't pander to me, you know.
I hate when that happens.
Like, not what you want.
Yeah, but obviously the band that I think on Indie Heads has the most shooters on capita is per capita. It's Black Country New Road. That's a band that has a new band that has a lot of shooters on the subreddit even now, because of course we're seeing these decades so far lists roll in, and I've read a couple dozen where's BCNR on these lists, and it makes me want to fucking shoot myself with a gun. But you know what makes me not want to shoot myself with a gun? Our next song from Rustie and Danny Brown, Attak.
Transition.
Yeah.
And this is I can't believe this song is not aged like milk. Like this, like Old English is like that surprised me how much it aged like milk. This is one where I was like, okay, of course, on a previous episode, I was like, we listened to a Rustie song and I was like, this is YouTube Shorts music. This is not very good. This is but this song is I love the song at the time, and this song still holds up. It's still fucking good. It's still a banger.
I mean, this
incredible.
This is still staple in his live set, from what I understand.
Yeah.
Like he still plays this pretty regularly. It's easy to understand why. It's just like a really punchy one. It's like perfectly understands how to, you know, like let him ride over it in a way that's pretty fun.
Yeah, I'm seeing. I think I'm going to that Knock Loose thing that's happening in about a week or so. And Danny Brown's been added to the bill, so I imagine he'll play that.
I think this song is especially interesting to listen to, so we've been talking about this. Danny Brown just started teasing another new album, and I am 110% convinced that it is going to be a hyperpop album, like capital H hyperpop, because. He's posted he just posted being in the studio with 8435, I think is that artist's name, which is classic hyperpop bullshit. But like
that's the group that has Hanger. Is that the song?
Yeah, I think so. Yes, that one. But like, so he just posted that, and then also like whenever anyone asks Danny Brown what he's listening to these days, he's like, my favorite artists are Frost Children and like Girls Ritual and like
Jane
stuff
Remover.
like that. So, like, there's just no way that... I really feel like Quaranta was him feeling like he had to do that because that's what people were expecting to him, and now this next record is him going to be like, actually, I want to be 100 Gex, is what... And I would like to see that, because I think that's the Danny that you can kind of hear on this song, and also a little bit on Old, as we talked about when we talked about that record. Like, him being kind of the EDM rapper, which was a big appeal to me at the time, like him being a guy that was collabing with people like Rustie that I liked, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Danny's like EDM phase is like shockingly well preserved compared to like, you know, like what Waka Flocka was doing, which
exactly
is like doing the I remember I read that book like Among the Bros that like talked about the this like drug running ring at the College of Charleston, and like how there was like a talent agency that like would just book guys like Waka Flocka to play like EDM parties at frats throughout the South.
Yep.
And like a lot of rappers got money from that, but like Danny Brown, like he just works with this music in a way that feels like very natural. So yeah, I'd much rather hear him do his Frost Children, the Dare, whatever album than like another thing of like old head like Mass Appeal raps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fantastic song. I think also this video was like not jarring. I think that this is when he debuted his new haircut. He finally got rid of the XXX old era haircut. He cut his hair short. Then he dyed it green. I famously remember because I think he was on 106 in Park either promoting this song or something like this. It's around this time where he gets his haircut. He has the new look.
106 in Park was still around at this time?
Yes, I remember because I think it was the Pitchfork headline. He goes on 106 in Park and shouts out Bjork. He's like, "I fucking love Bjork. Y'all should listen to Bjork," which is
that was the very beginning of
it's
the beginning of exactly what Danny Brown has become, which is the rap guy that likes all of the sort of rate your music. And people love him for it. And now he hosts a podcast where that's
he knows where his bread is buttered, man.
Also, I think this is.
But he really does seem happy in a way that's admirable. I'm never gonna fault the guy for just sort of finding a more comfortable existence than having to be the touring rapper all the time and all. Although he's still hitting the road quite regularly.
Oh yeah. But I think it just, a healthier way of being on the road. Also, the song is I think probably where I'd imagine that Danny sort of starts to put together the pieces to sign to Warp, because of course this song comes out on Warp. It's a pretty big success for them, and Atrocity Exhibition and everything he's done since has been on Warp. So I thought that was also a fun little connecting tissue.
This Rustie album overall has not held up, but that's just because this is the Rustie album where he was really peaking commercially and also was kind of really in the soup of the what being a rising EDM star will do to you. So like this record is a little too long and a little kind of all over the place, and the one he puts out after it is like way better. And the next album is one where you can clearly tell Rustie has been listening to someone else we talk about later this episode. But I think that the earlier decade Rustie stuff has not held up as much. He's someone that got better basically with every release, aside for this one, which is sort of a step back just in terms of him not really quite knowing how to make like a big budget crossover Rustie record besides this song, which is like a pairing that is really natural and works super well. But the rest of it is, there's not a ton of features on the record, but it kind of feels like the label wanted more features and him kind of being like, it's just kind of this. And there's not really like a clear direction to that record overall.
I'll be forever grateful to Rustie because like one of his, I think it was in 2012, one of his mixes introduced me to Geeked Up Off Them Bars. So
oh yeah. He's back. He's got 3 singles out this year, his first new music since 2015 or so. He's one of several people that gets very famous in the EDM circuit and then needs to eject himself from the industry for like 8 years in order to get sober and get his life together, and is now back making music again. Same deal with Hudson Mohawk, someone else that is sober now and is thriving in a new way. And both of them, the first time that Rustie like showed his face anywhere publicly was when Hudson Mohawk posted him and Rustie in the studio together like a year or two ago, and it was like, oh, the boys are back in town. Like it was a real heartwarming moment for me personally.
Yeah. And anything else on Attak, or we move into
let's move to our next song here.
Yes. Of course, next song. This is the reason we have Ian Cohen on the episode, folks. It's Warning by Cymbals Guitars. Ian, the floor is yours.
I mean, I've written so much about this album, like both at the time and in the 10-year anniversary piece, which I wrote very recently. And I'm surprised this got Best New Track. Maybe that was the consolation prize for the kind of urban legend, which is true about them being like hours away from getting the best new music and having it like just pulled at the last second. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm just curious, like what, because like I've been so in my like little kind of force field of like people who like think they got like a raw deal, or that like they never got as popular as they should be, or like what that would even mean. And I found myself, I don't know, when I was listening to this album, like for the 10-year piece, just thinking about like how washed he already felt himself to be at 25. And I think that's what stands out to me when I listen to it now. I mean, I know like I'm supposed to take the floor, but I'm like, I want to hear someone else talk about Cymbals Eat Guitars, man, because I've just been, I think I've emptied the fucking vault on this guy. I got nothing more to say, man.
Matty, what do you think of this?
I think it's a good song. For me, where I enter the Cymbals Eat Guitars world is probably on the 2016 record, Pretty Years, which I think is a really good record, like really fantastic indie rock record, impeccably produced by John Congleton. I also very fond memories because I was able to get famously my college radio station leaned much more towards like mainstream alt rock. So getting a band like Cymbals Eat Guitars into rotation at that station was a huge win. So stuff like Have a Heart is a big, like, love that song. And of course, Jackie and I, we always reference this as one of our like inside jokes bits that hasn't popped up in a while, but of course.
So we found the exact origin of this, and it's a Sean Cook post. Shout out, friend of the podcast, Sean Cook.
Oh wow,
our neighbor.
Is he still on Twitter?
Yeah, he's still
once
around.
in a while.
But speaking back to our conversation about people having like the surname of blank collaborator, the number one example of that was the extended period of time in which Alex G was referred to as Frank Ocean collaborator Alex G. And Sean had a really funny tweet that was the brain meme of Sadie Alex G, friend of Cymbals Eat Guitars. And so for a long time, we would call Alex G friend of Cymbals Eat Guitars as like a joke. And I just think that joke is really funny now that Alex G is signed to RCA Records and going to be opening for Dave Grohl on tour, and Cymbals Eat Guitars is this, like, the fact that at one point people were writing articles about Alex G being like, he's on Frank Ocean's new album, he's also worked with Cymbals Eat Guitars.
Okay,
like,
I'm going to push back on this because I feel like at that time, even in 2016, like Cymbals Eat Guitars, and again, like, I feel like it was kind of thirsty to like I feel like they were trying to prop themselves up on Alex G's hype, because it's like, oh, this is a guy really that is beloved. You know, this is after Beach Music, and you know, he had signed to Domino at that point, I think. Yeah. And it was just sort of like, hey, we're a Philly band, because you know, they were a Brooklyn band, Staten Island band. And I feel as if like that was their I don't know, like I just feel like it's like that episode. I'm going to get the Sopranos episode reference wrong, but it's just like we're like, I think it's like Silvio thinks he's going to be like a big shot in The Other Family, and he goes up and like the guy doesn't know who he is. Like, I always have this like deep fear that like if you ask Alex G about the time they hung out with Cymbals Eat Guitars, he wouldn't remember.
Oh God. I feel like Alex G would. I feel like Alex G wouldn't forget. He wouldn't forget his homeboys like that. He may forget the time that he did Third Eye Blind drunk, you know, at a Halloween show. But
I was wondering, Ian, are you familiar with this YouTube video of Alex G? I think it's how many years ago it was.
I think it's like 2018. 2018,
I feel like
2017.
I remember this.
Yeah, there's an entire YouTube set of him on Halloween and his band performing as Third Eye Blind.
Okay.
And they do an entire set of Third Eye Blind covers, and then they do 2 more like 5-song sets of just other popular songs. And the crucial thing to know about this video is Alex G becomes like almost too drunk to speak between sets 1 and 2 of 3, and by 3, Alex G has become an audience member at his own show. He is fully like no longer.
I know the Homer Simpson cover. I know the fake P is Pants Beto O'Rourke, but I'm not familiar with that piece of Alex G.
This is pre him like fully blowing up past the point that he could do like a basement show where he's covering a bunch of songs. But the part of it that will like live in my brain, like the line delivery is up there with like films I've seen, is he's many times played the song Randy Newman, You've Got a Friend in Me, and with a plastic bottle of vodka in his hand he goes, this song is called You Got a Friend in Me by Toy Story.
Oh fuck. It's so good.
It's one of the funniest. It's genuinely very entertaining. There's a part where his guitarist and him switch, and the guitarist does the Monster Mash in a very good Monster Mash impression. It's a really good, just like some guys having a fun time that clearly like each other YouTube video.
That man is a father now. It's crazy. He has a child.
No, it's true. Yeah, he's come a long way from singing, from dancing while the rest of his band plays "Under the Bridge" by the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
It's so cool to
be
hear
clear,
that.
Though,
Alex G.
I saw him back with the God Save the Animals tour, and in between sets, they were just playing "Life Is a Highway" by Rascal Flatts over the PA.
I love that fucking song.
And,
I love that song so much.
Like they spent people in the audience just go absolutely ballistic to the PA music. Like they're just singing along full blast. Alex G comes back on stage. First thing, the band starts running up, playing fucking Rascal Flatts' "Life Is a Highway." He's reading the lyrics off his phone, just like singing it as sloppily as possible. It's just, he can't help himself. It's so good.
That is a big part of the last two sets, is them doing songs partly on request and Alex knowing so few of the words to this. Like the band is really sharp and very capably able to just like jump into, let me just real quickly read you all of, so they do like a set of like 7 or 8 Third Eye Blind songs. Here is their set list: Monster Mash, You've Got a Friend in Me, When It's Over, Sugar Ray, Everybody Wants to Rule the World, Big Dipper, Built to Spill, Life Is a Highway, and then now parentheses, Alex stops singing most of the time.
Jackie,
I never thought I'd say this, but Big Dipper is kind of a lull in that. I would
all
prefer
of a
him
sudden,
to not do.
it has become a skip in the context of the surroundings. And then you've got Hunger Strike, Temple of the Dogs, Stay Together for the Kids, Basket Case, Say It Ain't So, Fat Lip, Scar Tissue, and then one last more encore with Under the Bridge, This Must Be the Place, and The Strokes, You Only Live Once for some reason. It's just like, you can see it like devolving into a drunken mess just as I read that track list.
As you were running that down, Jackie, I was like, this is simultaneously the Alex G cover set list and also the average set list of a drawing room Sunday karaoke night.
I was about to say, this is so accurate to just the average song choice of a random drawing room karaoke night. Like, that's exactly what the vibe is too.
Oh my god. But this is a fantastic song. Any extra thoughts on Cymbals Eat Guitars and on Warning, and I guess the album Lose by Cymbals Eat Guitars?
This one was not for me, but it was fun to watch all of you have a good time.
Yeah, I was not having fun at all.
I really liked this song. As someone who didn't really spend a ton of time with this record, I am with Matty in that Pretty Years was my introduction to Cymbals Eat Guitars, and I actually really like that album. That's an album that doesn't seem like it would be my business on paper, and there are a couple of songs on that record, especially like Finally and Have a Heart. Those 2 tracks at the beginning are just like, I come back to those all the time. They're really, really great. But it was never enough that I went back. I should give this album a listen. I think the vocals on this don't really work for me as much as the vocals on Pretty Years are more. And I also like, what's this guy's solo project called?
Empty Country.
Yeah, Empty Country. I like the Empty Country records. I think Empty Country builds on what Pretty Years was doing fairly effectively. It's a little bit more of that twang, a little less of the kind of fuzz out. I was also thinking it's really funny, like if this came out today, like some writer would call it shoegaze and then someone would yell at them for calling it shoegaze. You know what I mean? Like it's not actually shoegaze.
You're absolutely correct.
Oh,
yeah,
God.
it's just close enough, just fuzzed out enough that someone would go there.
Yeah.
It's a band that simultaneously is like a sign of the times of like, okay, yeah, a band like this, of course, blows up in 2014, but it's also like, oh, like nowadays they would have been so much bigger. Like, especially when
we didn't have
really in like a post Bruce Springsteen. Like,
I agree with Matty on this. I think
I don't know. I mean, I've been seeing that. Like, they've had such a weird career because they kind of blew up immediately in 2009, which is like tail end of blog rock, and then they put out a record that was ahead of if Lenses Alien came out in like 20, just a different label, that's emo revival right there. Whereas Lose might be popular now or it might not. And, Pretty Years, it's just like if it came from like a new band, I think it would be received maybe better, but they have that baggage of being like blog rock or whatever.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that if we could brain wipe people's memory and just plant like a Pretty Ears type album from, this is just a new band that you're hearing about, like I think it would do really well now. I think Lenses Alien is an album that I would maybe be willing to check out, but that album cover is not doing it any favors.
Their album covers are so fucking bad. Like, Why There Are Mountains, that, like, the one that I'm looking at right there, that's like there's an even worse alternate album cover. I think when they signed to Barsuck, that might be the original one. The Barsuck release is even worse somehow. Their album covers are just like Lenses Alien's fine, but pretty.
I think as far as communicating what the music is, Lenses Alien is the worst because it looks like a Bonobo album, and that's not what some of these guitars sound like, right? Like, that does not look like a guitar rock band in any sense. That looks like some shit that would be on in like a head shop,
like Tycho or whatever.
Yeah,
exactly.
I will say I think the Lose album cover is good. It's evocative.
It's evocative.
So much of what an album cover needs to be.
It's my favorite of the four, definitely.
I think Pretty Years is like kind of incomprehensible at a distance as like what actually is this, but the color scheme of it like does stick in my brain.
I like it.
It looks like I don't know, like a kind of post Mac DeMarco band that somehow has like 8 million followers on Spotify.
Ooh,
that's what I'm
getting. Yeah.
Or like it definitely it simultaneously has energy and also just sort of like alt rock band that was huge in the 2000s trying to figure out what they are in the 2010s, like a Kings of Leon.
I think the only thing that really dates that album cover before we move on is I think the Pretty Years font is very 2016. I think that's the part of it. It feels very a little like gold. Or like Daft Punk Random Access Memories core sort of like signature
style font, but
yeah, I think they're a good band. Definitely one of those bands that feels like they're just endlessly gonna be a sort of critics band, or a band that people that love them will always sort of say that they should get more due than they get, and that sort of thing. But I also think that they deserve it. They're not one of those bands that people were just trying to push up a hill. I think there's enough really great songs on every single one of their records, Empty Country and this one, that it's just like, there was something there, clearly.
They should have signed for Run for Cover, because I remember when they played with Say Anything in Modern, like they opened for like Brand New once for a bit in 14, and then they did this tour with like Say Anything in Modern Baseball, and like people fucking ate it up. But like, I feel if they were a Run for Cover band, they might not have gotten like, the critical acclaim, but like, I feel they could have developed a more sustainable fan base.
I think they would. That's a very smart point, and I think that it speaks to like how bands are sort of sold to people, which is that like, if you try to sell this band as like an indie rock band, the people that like that are maybe not going to be as like, is this necessarily that unique? Whereas if you sell this to emo fans, I think they would react to it the way that people react to like Slaughter Beach Dog, which is a bunch of people that haven't heard Neil Young being like, whoa, this is really crazy.
That is
like,
1,000,000,000% correct. That's exact. Because like, it's like, oh man, this is like band's got like fucking hooks. It's like people like, and again, these are my people, so I feel I can say this, but it's like, you can tell when it's like artists that are in that realm, that galaxy, where it's like, okay, like you're gonna discover like Neil Young.
I joke all the time about this, but like there's a period of pop music and like indie music in the early 2010s where, because I was not raised in like a Beatles household where the Beatles was like passed down to me, there were so many artists that would just like totally rip off the Beatles, and me as a dumb teenager would be like, these Portugal the Man guys are writing some really great songs, and it's just like, no, you just haven't heard like the White Album yet, like just like relax. Like, and I see that happen with people that have very limited tastes to one particular zone, and then they hear something that like introduces them to whatever for the first time, and they act like it's sliced bread,
But let's get into our next track. Of course, we're going right back to FKA Twigs with the track Pendulum, LP1. Yeah, I mean, if you want some, like 2 Weeks is a good introduction track to FK Twigs. Like, hey, here's a track that is an easy way to kind of ease into her whole deal. This is like, all right, you're eased in. Now you're getting this like crazy shit with like the song is called Pendulum, and then the song it's the song name. It's self-explanatory.
It's swinging.
It's swinging. The song is nuts. Fantastic song. That
Another
also
great video. Speaking of
yes,
her having incredible videos. This is the one where she's hanging by her hair from the ceiling, if I remember correctly.
Oh yeah. Which I will say for our next song, I will be pulling up the YouTube video for our next song because I feel like
you have to.
You have to for the next one.
Oh yeah, I was saying like because I'm thinking like, well, I'll save it for when we actually have the discussion for the next song.
But yeah, this song is incredible. Although I guess I should reveal a deep dark secret of FK Twigs, and the reason why I probably don't return to this record as much as I probably should. I have a bad memory associated with this album. I love this album at the time. I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was great. I think this is one of the first albums that I purchased on vinyl as I was starting to become a bit of a collector, even though I did not have a functioning record player at the time. But I was dating somebody in high school, and one of the things we were able to really kind of initially we're like, oh, we're both FK Twigs fans, and we both really like this record. And so I gave her my copy of LP1, and we had a very bad breakup that was very traumatic for me at the time, and took therapy to figure out and sort my shit. So I have bad memories associated with this album, which is honestly a shame because I re-listened today, and it's a really fantastic record that I like. People know that it's an important record of this decade, and it obviously got the critical respect at the time, and probably still did when the decade lists were rolling out.
Yeah.
But even then, I still feel like people are not like, hey, this record's really fucking good. Just because she's in bad movies now, let's put some respect on her name.
I'm remembering this bad movie. I remember Creed the movie. There was I think I can't remember who played the. It was clearly modeled after FKA Twigs, in my opinion. That person's whole shit.
Yeah, that script for sure said an FKA Twigs type in parentheses next to the character's name.
Did anyone see the fucking Crow remake that she was in?
Oh, that was Tessa Thompson. That's who the actress was.
Yeah, Tessa Thompson in the Creed movies. Of course, F.A. Twigs has embarked on her own movie career to pretty mixed results. Obviously, the Crow remake that came out this year that was...
I did not see that.
No, she needs to be in bad movies. She needs to be in bad movies just to balance. I think it gives her texture and depth. Because if she was in just good movies, then I think that would make her kind of less interesting.
Yeah, I don't like it when people are good. It's helpful that Childish Gambino is good at television because that balances out the other stuff, And similarly, it's I don't want FK Twigs to also be a great. It's not Janelle Monáe. Once Janelle Monáe was a great actress, I'm okay, maybe we don't need to keep doing the whole music thing, And it's similar with FK Twigs. It's the reverse. I don't want her to be good at acting because then she'll go back to music, which is where her talents are best applied. This is really I think this is the song that invents her visual style, thinking about the music video, because it is very art house strip club is just kind of her vibe for the next decade, and this is kind of the start of that.
The strip club as directed by Gaspar Noé.
Yeah. Or really the ultimate strip club is actually a real art. Not that I'm trying to be disparaging of it, but there's a lot of that energy around. But I also think that she's very speaking about albums having just recognizable covers, the LP1 cover is just one of the great. You see it on the shelf and you're oh, that thing. It is really striking and memorable and all the things that an album cover should functionally do. I think this is I think Matty, you and I have always been the same way that the Melissa EP is kind of the best FKA Twigs thing.
Yeah, so we'll get into that in the 2015 episode, whatever 2015 episode it's in, because it did get it Best New Track. So we'll get to it.
I am a huge Capri Songs girly. I was just thinking about my albums of the decade, and while I'm not anti-Magdalene, I like that record just because I think that record is the most capital F fun FKA Twigs has ever been. Like, that record is just like a good hang, whereas this record I really love, but there is kind of a fragile glass woman, like, emotional devastation to this record and Magdalene, whereas Capri Songs is a real, like, I kind of had a rough year last year, but now I'm going to shake my ass and talk about some crystal stuff. And I'm not like a woo-woo astrology girly, but while I listen to Capri Songs, I might as well be Janae Aiko. I might as well be like Ashwagandha, Tapestries Up. Like, I really love that record. And I think that that's like her kind of doing more of a pop thing more effectively than she did on Magdalene at times. But I'm really excited for the new stuff. I think it's going to be good.
It's funny that you mention that you're more of the like fun FKA Twigs, and I am definitely more of a fan of the devastated FKA Twigs. I love the fun FKA Twigs as much as the next person, but just like of the two songs of hers we discussed this week, I have more memories with 2 weeks, but I have this like absolute like primal love for Pendulum and a primal love for Magdalene in a way that, like, I don't know. I can, like, they really are kind of like two sides of the same coin, but they are very different sides of a coin. So it's a really wild coin. So you and I just are a little bit different in the way that we prefer our FKA Twigs, but like, man,
they're both
it's
good.
hard to hate either of them.
I totally agree. She's not one of those artists where I'm like, I wish you were doing this instead of this. I'm just kind of excited to see whatever she wants to do next. I think this new record will be sort of a pivot away from this record in its own interesting way, and she never really does the same thing twice, even though she does have a very like defined sort of deal. I think maybe my favorite FKA Twigs thing in recent years is that song that she has with Young Lean on Young Lean.
Oh my god, that song is so good.
That's crazy.
Song. It's so fucking good. I will never get over people saying that they look like a T for T couple in that music video. But that's just like in the same way that I feel about the Young Lean, Charlie and Robin remix. That's just like I wouldn't have put these two people in the same room, but now that they're here, it makes all the sense in the world to me.
Yeah,
sort of thing.
They're all European at the end of the day. You know, they
FKA Twigs isn't European, but she spiritually is European.
Oh, 100%.
She's English. That's right. Never mind.
Again, she's English, but European. It's all the again. Fuck Brexit. It's all the same. I do want to say it is kind of funny. We briefly touched on her film career, of course, starring in the flop Crow remake that came out this year. It is funny that we had two movies this year that were both trying to do like a 2016 Suicide Squad, Harley Quinn and Joker kind of vibes, like, be these two people together, and both of those movies are two of the biggest flops of the year, with Lady Gaga and Joaquin Phoenix as Joker and Harley Quinn, and then FK Twigs and Bill Skarsgård. I think it's Bill as the Crow. He's got the tattoos and he's edgier looking now. He's more modern.
I just thought The Crow was a classic, like, people misunderstand what people are nostalgic about a property that they're remaking thing. Like, people like The Crow soundtrack.
Yeah.
I don't think people really needed to see another The Crow movie, you know?
No, and the soundtrack, like, I will defend Henry Rollins' cover of Ghost Rider as long as I live. I didn't know that was a cover for a long time. I thought that was, like, his follow-up to Liar, and it's, like, one of the funniest songs I've ever heard in my life.
God. But yeah, FK Twigs, of course, we will return to FK Twigs. As we mentioned, we'll talk about a song off of the Melissa EP that got Best New Track. But folks, our next song, honestly, I don't think we talked about this artist at all during the first season of the podcast, which I think was pretty insane. I don't think he got any Best New Tracks during that time, or at least
I think one or two. I think we have. I'll double check and see right now, but we did talk a lot about him on our different series, Rap Forum Veterans.
Yes.
So, like, we have talked a lot about Lil B on this podcast, but I do think this is the first time we're covering him. Let me look real
I'm
quick.
sorry.
This video title,
we
it
gotta
really just
read. Yeah. Is ugly. I forgot this because all the little, like, I used to think like all the Little B YouTubes would get taken down. They wouldn't have the very powerful cooking music titles, but no, this one is intact. Hell yeah.
Yeah, Little B, No Black Person is Ugly, music video,
this
most
immediately
powerful
makes
song
more
of the
sense.
decade, question mark?
So here's the thing. The only other song to get Best New Track before this was I Seen That Light from I'm Gay, I'm Happy in 2011. So there's only one opportunity, and it wasn't for a song that, like, I even remember from that record. So.
Yeah, which is probably why we ignore it. Because I think we were playing pretty well ahead, obviously, with the series. So I think we're like, if we're going to talk Little B, it probably should be this song instead of that one.
Weirdly enough, God's Father is a track review. Like, in the track review section for Lil B, there's just a track review that's a 1-paragraph write-up of just God's Father is out now on Dat Piff, and it's not a track review.
We used to do those, yeah. I think that was like probably Larry's domain to like just kind of the guy in office churning out content.
Yeah,
but yeah, no, I think it's just a matter of like, it always feels like Lil B was not at his peak at the moment that critical establishments were ready to fully understand and coordinate him.
There was that one album, I want to say it was 2016 or 17.
Yep,
Black Hen.
Yeah, or no, there was one that was that the one that got Best New Music? It was like 26.
It got Best New Music and Best New Track. It got
gotcha.
the I Love McConan song got Best New Track.
Okay,
I believe it was also a Megan Garvey review of Black Hen, if I remember correctly.
That was toward the end of Megan Garvey's original Pitchfork run, and it is a 8.5 Best New Music Megan Garvey review. They finally let her cook on Lil B after many years.
I would be surprised if Lil B had heard that entire album as a whole. I'll be real with you.
that one is definitely not. I think this is a fascinating song to talk about with Lil B because it is like at this
message song, right?
Yeah. It's him doing something that could be perceived as more quote-unquote serious, and it's not that. I think there was, by many quote-unquote old head sort of people, like a resistance to Lil B because they sort of just assumed that this is a joke, in the same way I imagine that like a certain kind of 80s indie rock fan probably felt about Pavement. Like, are these people making fun of me? Are they making fun of me? Like, are they pretending to like this? Like, that sort of thing. And it's like, no, the point is that he's funny and he's also good in a way that is not prescriptive to the ways that we've sort of conceptualized a quote-unquote good rapper previously. Like, if you're judging it by how diverse is his vocabulary or like how nimble is his flow, like, it's
21 Savage isn't real till he raps over soul beats, like shit like that. I mean, I'm not in rap forums, but I know that kind of lingo.
Yeah, and you can know why like this track was like the one to finally be like, okay, we can give this Best New Track because it's kind of
the most powerful song of the decade. You got it.
It's the most powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I wrote for like Pretty Bitch or Pretty Boy or like the Soul Train Pretty Boy remix, but yeah, sure. Like,
not a lot of like I'm a Lil B freak, so this is probably why I'm thinking this, but like, I'm not seeing a lot of any of the real, like, if this was the Mano, Sansari, and Pitchfork era, we'd be seeing Best New Tracks for like every single one of like the peak run, I'm Miley Cyrus, bitch, I'm Miley Cyrus, that have Best New Track, like all of the
Ellen DeGeneres.
I mean,
like,
emotion will, but Lil B has essentially gotten like the civilization cultural victory already. His stylistic descendants have just like propagated the musical landscape so thoroughly that also, it is inescapable. Like American Terrorist #2 song of the decade. It's
underrated.
Underrated, yeah.
I also think
I agree. We gotta put it higher.
People talk a lot about his musical influence, but I also think that the word based is up there with like the Red Pill Matrix, with like things that have been completely divorced from their original meaning, but also not really. But like none of that happens without everything Lil B paved forward And yeah, this is just like I mean, everyone who likes Lil B feels pretty similarly. We just all really love the guy and don't pay attention to any of his music or his weird Facebook posts these days.
He's awesome if you pretend he did not do anything after the year of like 2017, 2018. Just pretend he does not exist after those years, and you're golden.
But the peak era, there are so many songs. I think he really was ahead of his time in terms of oh my god, can you believe he's rapping over this? Like, there was a lot of
Steve
that
McQueen
sort of
by
thing
M83. I remember that like very vividly because I was listening to nothing but Lil B and M83 separately. Those bands got me through some tough times, and then I remember him like, and it was like a completely shitty song, but I'm like, hell yeah. And of course, like, I'm thinking like the mean age of the people here. Like Lil B probably followed you on Twitter at some point, right?
Yes,
Like,
absolutely.
And I was like, oh my god! And then it's like he follows like a million people, like literally.
Correct.
So, like,
but even then, when you get the follow from him, it does feel like a coronation. Like, okay, you kind of made it on Twitter to some extent if you get the Lil B follow.
A song I think about all the time is California Boy.
Oh my god.
Which is like
ahead of its time.
Honestly, California Boy, like did that song invent Lil Yachty? Like you know what I mean? Like that whole like I've heard MGMT, like wait, come over here. Like, yeah, but that song is like so when you hear that song, there's this true joyous, like, I can't believe he's doing it quality to it. And to that music video where he's like walking around in a polo and trying to be like he's in it like in a 500 Days of Summer type indie movie is just like hysterically funny.
He's doing like white cosplay. It's awesome.
that is what it's like. Yeah, it's great.
I was trying to figure out a metaphor for Lil B today. I was like obviously Lil B, one of the most influential rappers of the last like 10, 15 years. And I'm like what is the comparison? I'm like, he's kind of like Master Splinter, and then like the rap game nowadays is sort of like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Like without with Lil B, like you don't get Young Thug, you don't get Uzi Vert, you don't get 21 Savage, like you do not get so many of these guys. Like Soulja Boy is a toxic waste that morphs into Master Splinter with Lil B, and then afterwards you have the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that are all the rappers. Basically
20,
everyone that was in the XXL.
30,000 100 million though. Like you could say what you will about that, but that was just defined an era for me.
Yeah.
I think when I think of like Vice as a medium, there's no article I think of first than the two guys like listening to Lil B's entire discography for several days straight. Like it just combines all the things, like being really into Lil B, durational gimmick journalism, like
there it is. Our Lil B marathon.
I was expecting like Drew Miller to be on this. I don't know who SB Kasulki is.
But yeah, this is, I guess, whatever. So 2012. So there was a lot of Lil B music released by this point. Like he would release much more, but even by this point, it's quite a lot that they had to traverse.
Could you click on up there the best colostrum supplements for boosting my health glow up? I need to.
I'm trying to remember what the last like actual Lil B project I really like. I think Hoop Life and like that kind of around this era, like this is the same year as Hoop Life, and then the next year is Thugged Out Pissed Off, which is where the albums start being like 60 songs, 100 songs, and it's like, okay, Lil B, settle down. Like it doesn't need to be this. Oh, this is 1 year after. I remember 05 Fuck 'Em was 2013. That's his 100 song mixtape.
Yeah, that's kind of where it's like, all right, man. Like we gotta. It is. I think in terms of album name, song name combination, No Black Person Is Ugly off the album Ultimate Bitch by Lil B. It's just
it contains that's the whole thing right there. Is it a sincere thing? Is it a joke? No, it's both.
Yeah, and by the way, it's like listening to any Lil B song on any medium other than YouTube is just like
it's wrong.
Yeah,
that's not how it's meant to be heard.
Yeah. I 1 year, I can't remember what year it was. Probably I want to say like 2016. Probably the last year I went to Coachella. I had to drive myself out because I was leaving at a different time than like the rest of the group I was going with. So my entire 2-hour drive out to the desert was nothing but my Lil B favorite songs playlist, and that put me in the best mood I've ever been in my entire life. Like I highly recommend it if you're taking a long drive to just like throw on a playlist of 80 or so good Lil B songs and just let it rock.
Mm-hmm.
I just appreciate that this article, one of the first sentences that is in it is 348. We play foosball. It lets you know just exactly the kind of person who's writing it.
Yeah.
And Jackie, I think there's a quote in this article that was exactly you. 714, total mental and emotional surrender to bass god. It feels sort of nice.
I had a different experience though, which is that I have a playlist of roughly 100 songs on Spotify called Rare Lil B Music Must Collect, which I made around. There was some point in the 2010s where he put all of his mixtapes on streaming at the same time.
Yeah,
which was the moment I realized that no one was really checking for samples on streaming services, because there's a lot of stuff in there that just begging to get pulled down, like the song where he raps over Toto Africa or all kinds of stuff. There's a song where he raps over Slow Dive. There's lots of great highlights of that genre, but like, yeah, no, it's very different listening to entire Lil B projects in order front to back over and over and over again versus curating the like most funny, entertaining highlights from like every single Lil B project that you would not want to listen to in full, but then you get like the couple of gems on a playlist that then you can enjoy. That's a completely different experience.
I think I posted one of those types of playlists in 2011, and my girlfriend at the time got so fucking mad at me because like she just saw the titles and like thought like I was just like posting like it was like, you know, it was like Pretty Bitch was on there and you know, stuff like that. So she was not
one
very
of my favorite I could just keep going on this forever, but my last one that I'll give as far as random Lil B just sort of jewels is and I think I had a viral tweet about this, but there's a song, Connected in Jail from Trapped in Bass World in 2012, which is a song that begins with like a skit in which Lil B is playing both of the characters. And Lil B is in jail, and the person is asking him, "What are you locked up in here for, Lil B?" He says, "You know, regular stuff, tiny pants, pink bandana."
Oh my god.
And that's everything. Lil B doing a skit with himself in which he is being arrested for wearing tiny pants and a pink bandana is that's Lil B right there in a nutshell.
He doesn't even do a different voice. It's the same voice. He doesn't even try. It's oh my god. Also, again, when talking about uncleared samples, it's stuff like that I like. Dean Blunt getting really popular on streaming like does worry me. I'm like, thankfully, a lot of this stuff is like archived, but I'm like, oh my god! Like as soon as someone figures out, like, hey, here's this guy that has nearly 1 million monthly listeners doing the most uncleared samples known to man, except for maybe fucking like Little B, of course. So, but yeah, we got one more song. Let's get to it. Here's the thing: you would think, okay, no black person is ugly. That'd be a great way to close out the playlist. But I mean, come on, it's SOPHIE. It's hard. This is an incredible song. What is there to say?
I mean, truly, like last time we came in with Bip, and like now we get this. It's just the product era is a feast for good tunes like this. It's this one in particular. I just love the play with textures where it's just constantly bouncing between like, you know, the kind of not to belabor the point, but the kind of soft, hard ricochet of aesthetics, which I think really befits SOPHIE's music, you know, overall, but like especially in this era where she's like really showing like, here is the range of textures I can do within a given space. Like, you know, each song kind of feels like its own exercise and like a space and texture that she can occupy.
Yes. Before we get back to the track, Ian has a hard out in the next few minutes. So Ian, any thoughts on SOPHIE but also we're going to ask you 3 questions: your favorite song on the playlist, your least favorite, and then your most 2014 song on the playlist. So
yeah, I
however you
mean,
want to tackle it, go for it.
it's so weird because, like, I was around for like, and like in my 30s when SOPHIE was first starting to get notice, and the whole PC music thing and the debate about whether this is real, is it not? But BIP. I mean, I remember hearing that song the first time. Like, this sounds like either something that's going to be the most 2013 shit imaginable, or it's going to like change music as we know it. And I think it's obvious how that came across. This song I don't quite remember. But yeah, I mean, to hear it now, just like to hear a 2014 SOPHIE song for like the first time in a decade in 2024. I mean, really, what can I say? Like, this is another thing where I'd rather hear other people talk about it. I mean, like, it's just so, how do I say it? It's just like an out of body experience to hear, kind of knowing where music went, to like think back to 2030. It's like, if there were people who didn't get it or whatever, like, you'd be wrong for life,
It reminds me, especially with like the vacuum that has been left by her and the lack of her continuing to push this stuff forward, but then the fact that everyone is still trying to ride the last ideas that she gave us.
Yeah,
it really does feel so much like rock music post Kurt Cobain, and everyone like taking the wrong lessons for Nirvana and butt rock happening as a result of it, because Kurt Cobain wasn't there to guide us away from that culturally. It feels very similar, where it's like, not only does this sound like what everyone is trying to sound like now, when you listen to it, you're reminded that, oh, all that stuff now doesn't have the same magic something that this had, even compared to some of the other SOPHIE stuff. I think all of the product songs are so amazing because they truly are, like, each single is its own like mission statement,
right?
More than any other like single series I can think of, where like every single one of them in their like little playground single artwork is like its own unique world of textures. And I think this song is kind of all of the product singles, the one that kind of gives you the widest view. It's like you have the kind of, not to bring back the soft hard comparison, but like it has the big shiny glimmery sugary synths, and then it gets scary, and then it goes back to pretty, and it gets scary, and it just keeps pulling that trick over and over again, and that like harsh contrast. And that kind of contains all of the elements there in that song. And even though I don't like it quite as much as like BIP or just like We Never Said Goodbye, those are just some of my favorite songs ever, and this is like right below those. It's great. Yeah. But yeah, Ian, why don't you give us your picks for the week of best favorite song of the week, least favorite, and then most 2014.
All right, so I mean, my favorite, it's got to be Shmoney Dance. That I mean, one could argue that it's the most 2014, but like, if we're talking about in 2024, which song I am liable to put on just for the hell of it, like, because I just want to like, upreg, as they say in the therapeutic world, I'm going with Shmoney Dance. As far as my least favorite song, I'm going to go with Old English. It's not that I dislike the song by any means, but it's just sort of like you were saying, the Red Bull Academy, like GTA, sort of like premature old head sort of stuff. And yeah, it's a song I don't remember at all. And so the most 2014. So if I'm thinking about like what it was like to be alive then and be 34 and to be like cognizant, I mean, I would say it's got to be Attak, just because like we're seeing like Rustie and Danny Brown both kind of realize a very 2014 style of electronic rap music. It's a song, because we've been talking about like, Iceage could come out today. So could the new Pornographers could be making this album as we speak. Cymbals and Guitars could be out on Run for Cover today. You will not hear Rustie 2014 being made. You will not hear Danny Brown making on a Rustie track. Moreover, you will not hear this style of music getting Best New Track. So I think that
of all the songs, I think it's the most like if you're making a teen movie about this period of time, I could imagine this being in the party of that teen movie in that sort of specific way. I get what you mean.
Project X2.
Yeah. Booksmart 2014 or whatever it was.
Oh my god. Booksmart 2049.
All right. I have to bid y'all adieu. It's been a fucking blast to remember some guys and gals. I love the concept for this thing. I love that I was able to contribute, and I love that it came up on a week or a section where I literally remember every single song, and I wrote about probably half of them. So this worked out great. It's been a pleasure. I will see, I'll see you where I typically see y'all on X the Everything site. So
yes.
All right. Later, y'all.
Thank you so much, Ian. All right. Of course, Ian gave out his picks a little bit early, but of course, we're still talking about "Hard" by Sophie and Devon. I see you're itching. You're itching to talk about this song in particular.
Oh yeah. So actually, Sophie was formally introduced to me, I would say, literally like a year after this. I get to college, and there's a bunch of seniors who are involved in the radio, all very queer and trans. I think every single one of these people who I'm thinking about now has in some way transitioned.
Who do they think they are? The Indie Heads podcast?
And they're like, hey, you should try this person out, Sophie. And I have one of those sort of like, it feels like I went into a chrysalis and molted and became something else, but like I didn't actually transition, so I don't know what I did. So either way, like there was a pre-Sophie period and a post-Sophie period for me. Hard is a really fascinating song for me. I was really having a lot of fun with the lyrics, thinking about how much gender is going on with the word hard, and the use of the word or getting so hard. Just, that at this time when she's anonymous or like, largely just like not necessarily known to other people besides like the people in her immediate social network, like she gets to use these phrases and they have all these meanings that don't necessarily translate to the rest of the public, but looking back, you can really savor them and enjoy them in a fun way, in a way that feels really transgressive. Obviously, the textures are fun.
As much as people were weird and pry-y about like the way that they wrote about her during this time, she was also playing with those expectations in a way that was like kind of tongue-in-cheek, like it was a two-way street in certain aspects, and I think that she navigated that sometimes by like playfully tipping up to the line of like what's going on here, and then eventually she just like rips the facade off,
and the world is better off for it now. And I would say definitely of the product songs, this isn't one I go back to nearly as much, but I did like what you said about this being a perfect, like, of each song being a thesis statement, but this one perhaps being one of the ones that has a thesis statement that covers product as a compilation because of all the textures that are going on here and the interplay between some extremes. There's nothing wrong with this song. It's wonderful.
I also think it's a good song to talk about a thing that Sophie often gets reduced to, which is pots and pans. And I think like this is a great song to talk about that, because the key to Sophie is not that she's doing that one scene from that We Are Your Friends movie where like Zac Efron is like recording like people banging hammers and he's like, I'm gonna put this in my EDM song. Like the thing that was genius about Sophie is that she was using synthesizers to make these sounds, right? Like she's using like digital technology, but then she's not trying to make that digital technology sound like instruments. She's like, what if this thing that is designed...
with like 2 cigarettes in her mouth the whole time?
Very, very crucial. I mean, Matty, just pull up the Vince Staples tweet.
Yeah, cigarettes and a bubble jacket. Yeah. God. Now, here's the thing. You're listening to this podcast, and folks, a straight white man has not gotten a chance to get his opinion in on Sophie. I will say, actually, I think it's my favorite Sophie song. I think this is the track that I think I got introduced to Sophie.
Okay.
It's the first Sophie song I heard, and I would still say it's probably my favorite Sophie song. Like,
there's not a wrong favorite Sophie song to have, in my opinion.
Thank you.
It's pretty hard to.
And here's
Matty, have I shown you the Death Grips mashup with this song that I was?
Yes, you have, and it's incredible. You have. You don't have to. Like, have I shown Matty this Death Grips mashup? The answer is yes.
I was about to say like we need to stop the podcast if I haven't shown that to you, but of course you have.
It'll be the outro song this week, probably the mashup of that song. But of course, the Vince Staples tweet that he posted during when Sophie passed away. Sophie was different. You ain't never seen somebody in the studio smoking a cigarette in a leather bubble jacket, just making beats, not saying one word. And don't let the verse be deep or heartfelt, because she's stopping the computer and walking outside until you get back on some gangsta shit. And I mean, again, perfect, just perfect. What else can you say?
To what we said in this episode about the things that you can't believe existed at the same time. It just, every day that passes, the Kendrick Lamar being on a Sophie beat is just this thing that I cherish more and more. That's a cool thing that happened, even though there's so much missed opportunity in the Sophie story. It's like a lot of wild stuff did get to happen in that very brief window of time. But yeah, no, it's hard to say anything else, but I do think that mashup is actually worth bringing up too, because I believe this is the year after Government Plates comes out, and I do think Government Plates in product are tuned in my brain not only because they have the same visual aesthetic but with black backdrop replaced with white backdrop, but also there's a lot sonically, stylistically going on in common between this era of Sophie and this era of Death Grips, and that music is the music that made me more than literally anything else. So it's hard for me to be objective about it, but I fucking love this shit.
Yeah. Not much more to say. I think we ought to let's get into let's wrap this sucker up. All right. We asked Ian the question, and now it's time to ask everybody else the question. What's your favorite song of the week, your least favorite, and the most 2014 song of the week? Devon, you are our guest. What are your picks?
Easiest one to say is going to be favorite. I think my personal favorite of these 12 is going to be Pendulum. I think it's a magnificent and devastating song, and I love to be magnificently devastated. I think my least favorite song is Warning by Cymbals Eat Guitars. And anyone is welcome to attack me for it. You can find me at Big Ugly on X the Everything app.
They only have 8,000 monthly listeners. You're probably okay. I think the only person that would have gotten at you is Ian Cohen, and he left you unscathed. So I think you're okay.
It doesn't. I think the other thing I will say about music that I'm super precious about is if somebody looks at me and says "Oh, I don't get Ethel Cain," I honestly don't blame you. The way that I fundamentally love certain things has occluded my ability to hold contempt for somebody for not getting it, because
you're also just a well-adjusted person.
Well, thank you.
That's called being is yeah,
but I don't necessarily feel the same way if somebody says "Oh, I don't get Wild Pink." I'm oh, are you sure? But whatever.
You're well dressed.
I'm not even obsessed with Wild Pink.
You might be on a Zoom call with some people that might have that opinion, but we should just.
Well, that doesn't shock me.
Yeah, no.
But the most 2014 song on here. The thing is, I think the guitar tones on Brill Bruisers have a certain 2014-ness about them, and I'm not gonna say that that's the whole reason that I'm gonna put it as the most 2014 song. It's also just that I was hearing it all the damn time in 2014 and kind of wanted to leave it behind in 2014. It's not my least favorite song. I will never be able to dislike it, but there was something about just the way that we did Bombastic and Clean at the time in 2014. I was also thinking of St. Vincent's stuff around this time.
Oh yeah.
Just even Queen has this to a little bit of an extent, but the other things that it's doing are so brilliant that I will not hold it against it.
I know what you mean, though. I can hear exactly what you're talking about. It's like this particular kind of 2010s shininess that isn't all bad, but it can be a little grating.
Mm-hmm.
It got old. It was something that I lived in and liked and was just kind of like the water I swam in. And now that it's 2024 and we do different things with our guitars, which I also could comment about, I listened to stuff from 2014 and I'm like, whoa, I can't believe this was just the water I swam in.
But here's the thing. I'm gonna disagree with you, Devon, only insofar as Brill Bruisers. It's not the most 2014 song of the week. It's the most 2008 song of the week. Like it doesn't even exist in 2014.
Like it is very 2011. It's not 2014, but it's very of its era. You know, like it's a year or two for the year that it's dated to.
In that case, I'll go ahead and do mine real quick. Favorite this week, it's honestly a tough call, but I think it's gonna be Queen by Perfume Genius. Like that's a song that is just like it has endured for me over the years. Like it's a song I consistently go back to. Fucking fantastic, and special accommodations for the Lord's favorite and Attak, two also really fantastic songs. Least favorite this week is also the most 2014 song this week for me, and that is Old English by Young Thug, A$AP Ferg, and Freddie Gibbs. And it makes me so sad to say that, because this is a song that I listened to so much when it came out, but I think the disappointment has just added to the dislike. It's pretty close between that and Jamie XX, but I think like there's stuff that on the Jamie XX song, it doesn't all work, but there's some stuff there that I do like. There's sections that I like, and it's also not in your face, whereas Old English, it's a very in your face song. You are reminded of the 2014ness of it all, and 2014 is not a great year for me in some ways. So I think that song reminds me of the worst parts of my 2014. So unfortunately is my least favorite and also my most 2014 pick of the week. Jackie, your picks.
Okay. Favorite song of the week. I gotta agree with Devon that it's Pendulum. I think Hard is very close, and I made a case for it kind of being very emblematic of Product as a whole, but it also kind of has never been. It's one of the only songs on Product that was never quite my favorite. It's always kind of been in like toward the top of my Product songs, but I've never had like my moment with it. Like I really liked MSN at the time when I was more into the kind of bass music side of that EP, and now it's like BIP and just like we never said goodbye are like the ones for me. So
they're the ones for me too. They're unbelievable.
I love Hard, but Pendulum is so good, and I too love to be majestically devastated because you are just me if I was a gay man, and that's why we're friends. Yeah.
Shout out to Volney, the other one.
Yes, we formed like this triangle across North and South America of power.
God.
Yeah, but it's got to be one of those two for best. For worst, I am gonna say Brill Bruisers, just because it's the most purely not my business, and Cymbals Eat Guitars I do kind of like, even though that was like a little outside my wheelhouse. I hear the Jamie complaints, but I don't. I didn't get to make this joke earlier, but this is the electronic music version of my famous "Hardcore Kids Be Like" tweet, where I did not know what hardcore junglist UK dance music kids be like, and this was this was Jamie XX telling me how they be like, and I reacted exactly the same way as I guess that's how they be like, and now I know how hardcore UK junglists be like.
Mm-hmm.
But then most 2014 song of the week, either Shmoney Dance or Old English for sure. I think those two. Also Attak. I think all of the rap stuff this week is pretty dated in better and worse ways for each one. But yeah, they all feel very of their era.
Yeah. And finally, Rose, we gotta get to bed. Rose, it's midnight, and we gotta get up early in the morning. Sorry, Rose.
Yeah, no, I don't. That's I literally I want. That's what I want to do. Best hard. Sophie, very good, great, wonderful. Most 2014 Shmoney dance. Thank you. It's Bobby Shmurda. Nobody else in any other year. And worst is probably that Jamie XX song. I never want to hear that again in my life, and I probably won't. So good for me.
But unfortunately, you're going to hear a lot more Jamie XX songs in the next few weeks.
See, don't remind me, please.
They're all better than this one, even as someone who doesn't hate
yes,
this
but
song.
There's still Jamie XX songs. That doesn't we
Gotta get your good time hat on, Rose. Gotta get that good time hat on.
Put it on, Rose. But yeah, that'll wrap it up this week. Of course, I'll do Ian Cohen's plugs for him because he did not get a chance to the big plugs. IndieCast, he's writing everywhere. Stereogum is the place where he's kind of living a lot. I think Up Rocks too. So go listen to IndieCast, even if they partially stole our podcast name and shortened it. But the beef has been squashed because we don't really podcast about indie music anymore, aside from this series. Devon, you are our other special guest. Anything you want to plug before we head out?
Go get a copy of Antics magazine.
Yes.
Anticsmag.com. You can find a review from Maddie Monroe in there. You can find a cover story that I was fortunate enough to do with the one Nate Amos. If you happen to like indie music, I think indie music is all right.
Yes.
And you can find my writing mostly at Paste, but also Stereogum, and sometimes a few other places if things happen to go that way. But I'm also a city planner, so I don't necessarily have time to cause a scene at every other magazine, but we're trying.
And of course, follow Devon at Big Ugly on X, the Everything app. It's all happening on X. But yeah, that'll wrap up this week. Of course, we have one more 2014 episode. Actually, well, two more. We have the final canonical part, 2014 part 3, and then also the 2014 cuts, which we will have a poll up for that probably whenever we drop the part 3 episode, as we'll have a poll ready to go where you can help us round out that episode. But yeah, that's it for us. It's past midnight. I gotta go to bed. I gotta work at 9 a.m. I gotta go. Oh, shoot, me. I gotta go to bed. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
I try so hard.